He was supposed to be the disgrace of the bloodline, and he was about to make every last one of them regret that word. 1,000 years of vigil, and the Empire's greatest guardian had been rotting from the inside the entire time. Blood erupts from a warrior's mouth as the name tears out of him. Rendon, impossible! His blade sinks deeper, and the betrayal pouring out of him is worse than any wound. He couldn't protect anything, not the labyrinth, not the servants, not the rose garden now burning behind him. The hooded figure above him sneers, and there's no pity in it, only the cold amusement of someone who planned this. No matter how hard you try, the attacker says, some things just won't work out for you. He calls it a talent deficiency, as if all those years of training were nothing but a prolonged embarrassment. He mocks the title with a cruelty that makes the words feel like a second blade, the so-called God of Ragnar reduced to this. Laughing, the hooded figure seizes his captive by the head, the sound of it echoing off the burning walls. If you lack talent, he spits, the least you could do is know when to disappear. He yanks the captive's head back, and blood sprays across the burning rose garden like punctuation. Everything that has come to this, the attacker declares, is entirely your fault. He gestures toward the flames consuming the garden, a rhetorical question dressed as an accusation. He gestures to the fallen servants and the vow that couldn't be kept, the one that was supposed to matter most. Then his gaze drops to the blonde woman on the ground, and he says her name like it's a verdict. Why did she become a cold corpse? The words land like a hammer. Because you were the disgrace of Ragnar. That's the answer. That's all of it. A warrior stands sword in hand, watching the hooded figure loom over the fallen woman, unable to move. He claims they were sharing memories, and his voice cracks under the weight of something that has no name. He asks if this is truly the end, and the silence that follows is its own kind of answer. I couldn't protect anything. 3 words. The whole failure of a life compressed into 3 words. And now everything is burning down like this. He says it like he still can't believe it's real. A warrior with glowing eyes charges forward, the desperation in his movement more honest than any declaration. A stern-faced man watches the chaos unfold as a dark-haired warrior begins gathering power that shouldn't exist yet. He prepares for a final stand, channeling something raw and enormous, and the world around him starts to come apart. The gray-haired instructor laughs from a distance, trusting his own teachings, unaware of what those teachings have created. A shadowy figure with glowing red eyes watches a man clutching a bag of coins, a deal already made, a future already sold. That man traded Theo's secrets for his own survival, and he hasn't yet understood what that choice will cost him. Theo races down a grand hallway, his jaw set, his eyes forward, the weight of something enormous driving every step. His mother's voice reaches him from behind, soft, warm, entirely at odds with the storm inside him. He stops. She notes that he worked hard again today, and the words land somewhere tender. They embrace, and for a single moment, the burning rose garden feels very far away. A brutal battle from 10 years ago flashes across his mind. Blood, screaming, a woman on the ground. A wounded woman lies on the muddy earth as a soldier's shadow falls over her, and Theo remembers every detail. His body erupts with light, and a voice cuts through the chaos. It's possible now! I have Ragnar's talent! The shout tears out of him like something that has been waiting years to be said. Theo swings his blade with everything he has, pushing past every limit his body ever set for itself. He gasps, I'm dying, and a new objective materializes before him, cold and indifferent to his pain. Everyone called him the weakest son in the family, and every single one of them was wrong. His eyes burn red as he strains past the point where lesser men would have already stopped. The quest completes at 100%, and something erupts from him that has no clean category. He is reborn, not metaphorically, not partially, fundamentally, completely, a different man than he was a breath ago. A figure sits upon a throne of swords, and the image carries the weight of a past life he barely survived. He was once embedded in the intelligence department, the boy who knew where every secret was buried. His lack of skill had been obvious then. He never imagined that knowledge would one day become his sharpest weapon. Now he stands ready, and the power surging through him feels like a debt finally being repaid. A single phrase tears out of him, above all, and the rest doesn't need to be said. He is capable of so much more than they ever allowed him to be, and he intends to prove it without asking permission. Theo fights with a ferocity that makes the air around him feel dangerous, his red eyes blazing with something ancient. He is a new man, Not the one they mocked, not the one they dismissed, not the one who couldn't protect anything. And with that transformation, a power is about to surface that no one in this family was prepared for. A pale-skinned young man with glowing red eyes channels mana through a dragon heart that should not exist in someone his age. The mana hole within him is unique, adjustable, responsive, unlike anything cataloged in the family records. Evelyn Nerville, the former commander of the White Armored Dragon Cavalry, now oversees Training Ground 4 with the same iron precision she once applied to war. She led the elite cavalry with unwavering honor, and retirement has not softened a single one of her instincts. Training Ground 4 is a far cry from the battlefield, but her senses have not forgotten what danger feels like. She detects the mana wave before anyone else does, a tremor in the air that doesn't belong to any ranked apprentice. The wave is enormous, anomalous, nothing like the standard signatures she's cataloged over 30 years of service. She has felt powerful mana before. This is something else entirely, and it makes her go very still. If she identifies the source of that dragon heart signature, the young man at the center of it faces execution. He knows it too, knows his dragon heart's mana hole is different, knows what discovery would mean. The anomaly can be adjusted and manipulated to its owner's will, which is precisely what makes it so dangerous. Theo, desperate for a power that can match the family that has always looked down on him, is the rightful heir to this strength. And he is the source, the singular impossible mana signature that has just made Evelyn Nerville stop breathing. The boy they called the family's disgrace was secretly carrying the most lethal potential on the continent. He just shattered his opponent with a single blow, and the debris hasn't even settled yet. Evelyn scoffs, calls his newfound output utter trash, but her voice has an edge to it that wasn't there a moment ago. She demands he cast aside his master, her tone sharp, her eyes sharper. Without a word, the pale-skinned warrior unleashes another strike, deliberate, controlled, devastating. His target shatters into fragments, and he watches it happen with the calm of someone who expected exactly that result. He simply asks her, "So what?" 2 words carrying the weight of someone who has already decided nothing she says will stop him. He wonders aloud whether a man they call a sick bastard can truly ascend to half-god status, and the question isn't rhetorical. He has already made the vow. Rendon will answer for what he did, and no rank, no title, no ceremony will stand between them. He steels himself, and the resolve in his eyes is the kind that doesn't waver under pressure. It was forged in it. The mana hole in his dragon heart is growing, the signature expanding, and Evelyn Nerville is getting closer to the truth. She detects the anomaly with the precision of a woman who spent decades learning to read the battlefield's smallest signals. Theo, the boy who swore he would not let them die again, stands ready, his heart burning with that vow. But his righteous fury is met with immediate dismissal, because that is what this family has always done to him. The gray-haired instructor's voice booms across the training ground. "Get out of my sight! If I have to report this to the law office," Theo begins, and his voice carries something the instructor hasn't heard from him before. It isn't desperation, it's calculation, and that distinction matters enormously. A holographic screen flickers to life, announcing a tutorial quest that demands immediate resolution. Evelyn proposes they settle it the Ragnar way, her gaze sharp, her meaning unmistakable. The gray-haired instructor agrees with overwhelming enthusiasm, as if fortune itself has just handed him a gift. "The heavens are on my side today," he exclaims, and the irony of that statement will take him a week to understand. The duel is set. 1 week from this moment, the stakes raised to something neither of them can walk back from. Theo stares at the challenge ahead, sweat already forming, the pressure of it pressing down on him from all sides. The gray-haired instructor stands ready, the posture of an intermediate swordsman who has never once doubted his own superiority. Theo is identified as an apprentice, a label that has followed him like a shadow and that he intends to bury. "Unless you want to lose an arm," the instructor warns, and his voice drips with the kind of menace that comes from never being challenged. He continues his critique, relentless, each word another stone added to a wall Theo has been building against for years. "I was going to let it slide," the instructor admits, his tone shifting slightly, "because I felt sorry for you. But I guess that's not possible," he adds. And there it is, the contempt dressed up as mercy. Theo unleashes a sword strike, sharp and decisive, and for the first time the instructor's expression changes. The instructor prepares his counter, the seasoned posture of a man who has never once been made to look slow. Their swords clash in a burst of light, and the sound of it draws every eye in the training ground. "The idiot is losing!" Someone calls from the sideline, and the schadenfreude in their voice is almost cheerful. "He doesn't even know how to swing a sword!" Another shouts, and the crowd leans in, expecting the familiar outcome. The instructor attacks with the ferocity of a man who has decided to end this quickly and without mercy. He laughs, loud, maniacal, the laughter of someone who has already written the ending of this story. Their blades meet again, sparks cascading, and the crowd watches what they believe is a foregone conclusion. "What does it feel like?" the instructor asks mockingly. "To have your arm cut off." Theo's sword pierces the instructor's arm, swift, precise, a counter no one in that crowd saw coming. Blood splatters, the arm gives way, and the laughter dies in the instructor's throat before it can finish forming. The instructor's defeat ignites something that was already in motion, a plan that has been waiting for exactly this moment. Theo thinks back to his past life, to the version of this fight where he wasn't fast enough, wasn't ready. "From now on," he says quietly, "things will be different. It isn't a boast, it's a vow renewed." His glowing red eyes activate the observation skill, scanning the space around him with a precision that borders on predatory. A wave of raw blue energy explodes outward from him, and the training ground suddenly feels very small. The captain of the White Dragon Squad makes his entrance, white-armored, loud, and apparently delighted by everything he's just witnessed. "A magic dragon," the captain bellows, and he sounds genuinely thrilled about it. He dismisses the massive beast with a casual wave, as if colossal magical creatures appear at his training grounds every Tuesday. He extends a gauntleted hand to Theo and makes an offer that changes the shape of everything. Join the White Dragon Squad. Evelyn watches from a distance, a grim suspicion forming. Did this young man just eliminate his own master to clear a path? She says the name quietly, the weight of it settling over her. "He killed Rendon." "I'm worried about Rendon dying," she murmurs, but the worry has the texture of someone who already suspects the answer. A young swordsman with a sealed letter clutches it with both hands, a red wax stamp pressed into the paper, a smile on his face that doesn't belong there. The man with the glowing red eyes was hiding a secret that could get him executed, and the wrong person was starting to look in the right direction. A colossal dragon descends from the sky, carrying figures on its back, and the warrior below grips his sword and watches. His mind races through the implications of what just happened, cataloging, calculating, already 3 moves ahead. The warrior's gaze sharpens, not with fear, but with the focused clarity of someone who has survived worse than this. Evelyn Norville, former vice captain, stands in a warm golden light and feels the pull of something she thought she'd left behind. She misses the White Dragon Squad, the structure of it, the purpose, the clarity of knowing exactly what she was fighting for. A young apprentice with admiration burning in his eyes watches Theo and wants nothing more than to test himself against him. He grins with an unsettling fervor, the kind of eagerness that sits just on the wrong side of healthy. "That's right," he exclaims, and the excitement in his voice carries an edge that makes the people near him step back slightly. A dragon descends from the sky while Theo stands below, his hand on his sword, his mind already on the next problem. The warrior's gaze doesn't waver. There is something in those red eyes that has never once considered retreat as an option. And that resolve, forged in a past life and sharpened in this one, is about to be tested by something that has been watching him. Theo Ragnar, the boy who died once and came back with the vow intact, is 17 years old and already outgrowing the world that tried to contain him. The apprentice, known as the Fool of the Southern Gate, watched Theo's growth with his own eyes and still can barely believe what he saw. He genuinely believes in Theo's ability, and he wants to test himself against it, not to win, but to understand what he's standing next to. 2 skilled warriors erupt into a duel, energy crackling between them, the force of their exchange rippling outward across the training ground. One unleashes a devastating wave that scours the ground. The other counters with raw, unpolished power that shouldn't be this refined at 17. I saw his miraculous growth with my own eyes. The Fool of the Southern Gate shouts, his conviction carrying over the noise of the clash. Theo possesses abilities that don't fit any standard classification. Player observation, Ragnar, a combination that the family's record keepers have no precedent for. He's focused on the blooming ceremony, and the weight of it forces him to look back at every choice that brought him here. Then a thought strikes him, quiet, almost offhand, but with implications that unfold like a map. What if I use observation on myself? The confirmation flashes immediately. It works. His personal stats materialize before him. Strength 13, Endurance 12, Intelligence 11, Agility 14. Magic 190, Luck -49. He stares at that luck stat for a moment longer than the others, and something in his expression suggests he finds it almost funny. A 19-year-old lower-rank swordsman steps forward, his eyes fixed on Theo with the particular intensity of someone who has something to prove. He possesses the trait called passion and perseverance, and he has been waiting for this chance with the patience of a man who doesn't know how to give up. "Step forward," he commands, and his voice has the steady confidence of someone who has rehearsed this moment many times. A 17-year-old prodigy with short light hair finds himself facing a rival he hadn't anticipated, and the confusion on his face is genuine. He wants to stand before Theo as an equal, and his current skills were honed for exactly this kind of confrontation. The gray-haired instructor watches the unfolding chaos with the careful eyes of a man reassessing everything he thought he knew. Evelyn surveys the scene from her position at Training Ground 4, cataloging each fighter with the efficiency of long experience. The Fool of the Southern Gate offers Evelyn a respectful nod, a small gesture that carries more weight than it appears to. The fierce battle escalates, and the air above the training ground crackles, with the energy of people pushing past their limits. A thunderous cry splits the air, raw, unrestrained, the sound of someone refusing to be contained by the body they were born into. Theo descends in his full power, wrapped in a brilliant blue aura that makes the surrounding air feel thin and charged. The masked warrior sinks to one knee, the legendary figure of the North, brought low by a 17-year-old disgrace. A warrior with burning red eyes watches and asks, "Is this truly what they call the Fool?" And the question isn't mocking, it's recalibrating. That same warrior charges forward because the fight is not finished, and Theo has never once confused a pause for an ending. The brutal exchange concludes with Theo's sword in fragments on the ground, and even broken, he is still standing. The captain of the White Dragon Squad acknowledges what he just witnessed, an unbreakable spirit wrapped in a body that refuses the word enough. He admits Theo couldn't have defeated one of the Northern Four. But that isn't what he's evaluating. The boy who returned from a past life with a vow and a dragon heart is not being measured by his wins tonight. He's being measured by what he did after his sword broke, and the answer to that question is already written in the captain's expression. "It looks like you've lost," the captain says, and Theo agrees immediately, without shame. He lost the moment his sword shattered. He knows it, he says it, and then he waits for what comes next. The captain smiles, and his eyes carry the glow of someone who has just found exactly what he was looking for. "The Gyeoryong Society," the captain announces, and the name lands in the air like a stone dropped into still water. He believes Theo is more than qualified, but he also knows the society will be full of people who will look down on him. He sees that as the perfect environment, not despite the hostility, but because of it. He anticipates a rare chance to observe something worth watching, and Theo Ragnar is exactly that. A scream tears through the air, "My son," and Theo's name in his mother's voice sounds like something breaking. He whispers back, "Mother," and the pain in that single word carries everything he hasn't been able to say to her. The man who shattered Theo's sword now stands before him, studying him with the expression of someone encountering a contradiction. "Are you truly young Lord Theo?" he asks, and the disbelief in his voice is not an insult, it's a recalibration. A booming laugh erupts from the man, and it echoes off every wall in the hall. "Ha ha, young Lord Theo!" He casts a discerning eye over Theo and the prodigy beside him, murmuring something that suggests he's already revising his expectations. The self-proclaimed Dark Panther takes a smug drink, radiating the particular arrogance of someone who has never once been made to feel small. The captain of the White Dragon Squad acknowledges the fire in Theo's spirit for the second time, and repetition from a man like him means something. He declares Theo wouldn't stand a chance against a warrior of the Northern Four. But he's still smiling when he says it. Theo heads straight to Camellia Palace, summoned by the Dark Panther, and he arrives knowing exactly what the invitation means. This wasn't a social call. The Dark Panther wanted a toy, and Theo was supposed to play the role of the one being humiliated. Theo surmised the motive the moment the summons arrived. "The reason he invited me is obvious. He hadn't come unprepared. He never comes unprepared anymore. That version of him died in the past life. The Dark Panther appeared, dark hair framing a face dominated by red eyes, a menacing smile already in place. "What's the matter?" he taunted, his voice dipped in false concern. "Don't tell me you're mad." His grin widened, sharp and predatory. "Come on, a little greeting between brothers shouldn't be this hard. You've gotten a lot more interesting, haven't you?" he added, and the enjoyment in his voice was entirely genuine. The prodigy with the blue scarf watched the exchange with the expression of someone who had walked into a room mid-argument and couldn't find the exit. Theo suspected the prodigy might be part of the scheme, then looked at his face and revised that suspicion immediately. The prodigy interjected, his tone surprisingly sharp. "Hey, watch your mouth!" he added, almost as an afterthought, that he was technically a bastard too, which did nothing to improve the atmosphere. Theo's eyes narrowed as he held a sparkling gem, and a decision crystallized behind those red irises. "I was going to wait a bit longer," he murmured, and then the red in his eyes deepened. "But I guess that won't work." The gem caught the light as he made his choice. A clash of swords rang through Camellia Palace, blade meeting blade with a force that shook the walls. "What does it feel like?" Theo asked, his voice almost conversational. "To have your arm cut off?" His sword pierced the gray-haired instructor's arm, and the answer to that question arrived immediately. The instructor screamed, furious, disbelieving, the roar of a man who had never once expected to be on the receiving end. Theo stood firm, unfazed, his red eyes already moving to the next problem. Reflecting on his past life, he thought, in that version, he wouldn't have been fast enough. The Dark Panther erupted in laughter. "Pooh ha ha! Wow, Theo! I didn't know you were this funny!" Theo's expression turned to something that had no humor in it at all. "This ends tonight," he declared. Dark energy swirled around him as he posed a question that wasn't really a question. "Are you ready to deal with the consequences?" His defiance settled over the room like a change in weather. Something in the air shifted, and everyone felt it. An immense pressure radiated from his opponent, the kind of pressure that makes lesser fighters reconsider their life choices. "I need to apologize," the red-eyed warrior said, his voice carrying the particular grimness of someone who means it. "Which means I have to kill you." A shadowy figure clutching a chess piece revealed himself as the man commanding the 6 pillars from the shadows. Theo stood poised, a powerful blue aura crackling around him, his sword hand steady. The masked warrior's strength gave out, and he sank to one knee. The brutal confrontation finally concluded. The red-eyed warrior surged forward, escalating the fight with a ferocity that suggested he had reserves no one had accounted for. A new figure entered. Short light hair, a cigarette dangling from their lips, observing the chaos with an unsettling detachment. A brutal battle raged in the grand hall, the floor already littered with the consequences of decisions made in dark rooms weeks ago. The pale-skinned warrior with crimson eyes unleashed a devastating attack that rearranged the architecture of the hall. "I felt you following me since we first met," he said, his gaze cutting through the smoke and debris. "Now," he continued, a dangerous glint sharpening his expression, "I can finally cause some proper chaos." Theo Ragnar, the boy who returned from death with a vow and a dragon heart, had turned this chaotic battlefield into his personal proving ground. "Messing with you," he mused aloud, "is my new hobby these days." He asked his unseen opponent what their answer was, and the silence that followed was its own kind of response. The gray-haired instructor, nursing a bottle somewhere quieter, told someone, "He's one of the best I've ever taught." Someone asked if that included the white-haired warrior, the one who had also trained under him. The instructor confirmed it, then added, "In terms of potential." The distinction hung in the air. "I'm not telling you this for no reason," he said, and the weight behind those words suggested a reckoning was coming. Evelyn stood with sword in hand, surveying the fallen, her expression the controlled stillness of a woman processing something enormous. She realized the true severity of what she was looking at as a figure in a dark suit watched from across the room. The red-eyed warrior listed the families of his victims with the calm of someone reading a ledger. Powerful names, prominent names, names that would echo. A system notification materialized. "Congratulations! You have formed a party with Evelyn Nerville and completed Tutorial Quest 4. But the escape was only the first move in a plan that had been running for much longer than anyone realized. The woman's fury was barely contained, her voice sharp enough to cut. "You actually let that fool walk away with an excuse." "Are you even listening to me?" she pressed. "I told you not to take this lightly." The man beside her could only murmur, "I'll keep that in mind." and the shame in his voice was the only honest thing in the room. A shadowy figure with glowing red eyes observed the scene as the woman fanned herself with the composure of someone who has already decided the outcome. She turned to the shadowy figure and said, "He clearly takes after you." The words carried a complicated weight. A man with long gray hair and a white cape appeared, his voice carrying the measured calm of someone who has already accounted for this development. "In fact," he began, "this situation may have worked out for the better." He continued, the calculation in his voice unmistakable. "It's been difficult to bring it under our control because of that." He gestured toward a distant castle. "Full of nobodies," he said, outside the patriarch's attention. The shadowy figure added, "The incident at the Gyeoryong Society provided exactly the opportunity we needed." The gray-haired man laid out the strategy with the precision of someone who had rehearsed it, Theo establishing himself as Rose Palace's representative. "We used the Gyeoryong Society incident as the pretext," he concluded, and the pieces clicked into place with a quiet, terrible elegance. The woman's playful facade dropped, her tone hardening. "How about we simply subdue him through proper legal channels instead?" Her expression shifted to something grimmer, more certain. What truly bothered us about Theo growing stronger was the risk of drawing the patriarch's attention. The boy who returned from death was becoming visible, and visibility was the one thing they couldn't afford. She fanned herself again, the sly smile returning. "But if we defeat him now that he's more visible and powerful, Rose Palace will bow its head to Troyvon," she declared, and the satisfaction in her voice was absolute. "We absorb Rose Palace," she beamed, without any fuss whatsoever. A man with a cruel smile said, "It's already done then," and he meant it as a comfort. He recalled the moment Theo simply couldn't stand being insulted anymore, the moment the mask slipped and the real man stepped forward. Another man, nursing a drink, mused aloud about the kind of person who endures years of being ignored, dismissed, called untalented, and eventually becomes strong enough to make them pay, he finished. And there was something in his voice that sounded like recognition. In the arena, a man was struck down hard, his cry of disbelief carrying across the space. The victor remarked coolly that Theo had completely outsmarted an opponent he couldn't beat by skill alone, and done it without hesitation. He challenged Camellia Palace, a place no one dares to touch, and did it without looking back. The act sent shock waves through the family's political structure, and Duchess Cecilia felt each one personally. Her voice cracked as she demanded to know where her son was, the question swallowed by a dread she couldn't name. The guard confirmed Theo was already being taken to the court of law, and the words landed like a sentence already delivered. Cecilia crumpled, a broken whisper escaping her as she asked about the charges. Inciting rebellion, the words shattered whatever composure she had been holding onto. She understood it then. The invitation to the Gyeoryong Society had been a trap from the beginning. Inside the carriage, Theo knew imprisonment was the least of his concerns, and the smile on his lips proved it. He would face trial, he declared, and he said it with the quiet confidence of someone who built the stage for this performance. This was precisely what he had been anticipating, and the preparations he'd made were already in motion. The Dragon of Black Armor presided over the proceedings, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade through silk. He surveyed the assembled figures and spoke Theo's name, and the name carried more weight than it once did. A stern-faced man confronted Theo, demanding to know how he intended to answer for his actions. "I will hold you accountable," the man declared, and Theo's eyes began to glow with a light that suggested accountability ran in both directions. Axon's laughter boomed through the hall, finding Theo's declaration genuinely delightedly amusing. Theo tightened his grip on his sword hilt. "This ends tonight," the same vow, spoken again, and it meant more the second time. The stern-faced man's eyes widened before darkening. "What?" The white-haired warrior's voice rose in fury. "If I had known they'd be this insolent." He insisted on immediate punishment. "Their knightly honor demanded it," he said, and he believed every word. The woman with white hair acknowledged the raw strength on display, but questioned the intelligence behind it. "He's not stupid enough to actually do that, is he?" she mused, and the uncertainty in her voice was new. A man with a sinister grin sneered, "Your arrogance truly knows no bounds." "This just makes things easier," he declared, and the grand hall stood empty around him as he said it. A lone figure ascended a platform, and the single word he spoke fell into the silence like a stone. "War." Theo stated his refusal plainly. He was not planning to accept even a slap on the wrist. His defiance settled over the assembled figures like a change in season. Something had shifted, and there was no shifting it back. Proxy battles usually meant war, but sometimes a single duel decided everything, and sometimes that was worse. When strength was too lopsided, a one-on-one fight settled the dispute and left no room for appeals. That was the core of a proxy battle. Two representatives carrying the weight of their entire families on every swing. The Lord of the House arrived and commanded Theo to step forward, the authority in his voice absolute, accustomed to obedience. His father asked him directly why he was even here, the question carrying layers that a simpler man might have missed. The Lord of the House asked who Theo intended to send as his champion, and the hall went quiet, waiting for the answer. He observed that fighting this proxy battle would be incredibly difficult for Theo, and the observation was not unkind. "Even if I'm broken," Theo declared, "I will not kneel voluntarily." The hall absorbed that statement in silence. His father erupted in laughter, asking if everyone heard what his son had just said, and the pride in it was something he couldn't quite suppress. A system notification flashed. Scenario Quest 1, Path of the Successor. The objective materialized. Take control of Dongbaek Palace and uncover its hidden secrets. This was Theo's first quest beyond the tutorial, and his red eyes fixed on the message with the focus of a man who has been waiting for exactly this. Across the hall, the white-haired warrior smirked and announced he would send himself into the fray. He declared that through death, Theo would finally understand his true place, and he said it with the certainty of someone who had never once been surprised. A question moved through the grand hall like a current. Why had the patriarch come all the way here? Another man urged focus. The matter at hand, he said, was what mattered now. The Lord of the House turned his gaze to Theo. "So, what do you say, my son?" Theo's red eyes gleamed as the question settled over him. "Will you do it?" A man with white hair voiced his concern. Testing Theo with a single strike meant acknowledging him, and acknowledgement had consequences. The implication was clear. If Theo could withstand that blow, the Lord of the House would have to see him differently. A dragon symbol flared behind a smiling man who said he didn't believe Theo could take that blow, and the smile suggested he was hoping to be wrong. Another man shouted in desperation, "I must stop him from earning the Lord's favor, no matter what." He elaborated on a conspiracy involving retainers and a name that carried its own particular danger. The Lord of the House silenced the outburst with a single sharp word, "Silence." He redirected the room, then turned back to Theo. "Will you do it?" Theo's answer was written in the way he gripped his sword, and then the duel exploded into action. The man bellowed in pain, his disbelief echoing off every surface. This duel wasn't just about victory, it was a declaration. He outsmarted his opponent, the victor observed. The fight had been decided before the first blade was drawn. He challenged Camellia Palace without hesitation, a bold move that shook foundations that had stood for decades. A grim-faced man asked, "What are you thinking now?" And the rising stakes were visible in every line of his face. Theo smiled darkly. "Too bad, that won't work." His plan was already 3 steps ahead of the room. An armored man asked if Theo had loosened up, and the real test was about to begin. "Yes," Theo replied. Quiet, simple, the confirmation of a man who is ready and knows it. His opponent's eyes blazed with fury. The fury of someone who had fundamentally underestimated what was standing in front of him. "Good, then let's begin." The intensity spiked immediately, the air between them going tight. A powerful aura detonated around them, and the raw energy of it made the floor crack. His opponent looked overwhelmed, genuinely, visibly overwhelmed, and that expression had never crossed his face before. "Just his presence alone is this overwhelm?" he cried, and the disbelief in his voice was the most honest thing he'd said all day. "You're holding on well," the armored man acknowledged, and the grudging respect in it was something Theo filed away. Theo's stats flashed, level 7, magic at 195, and a confidence forming that his body might actually survive what's coming. He gripped his father's sword and unleashed a torrent of pure crimson energy that split the ground beneath their feet. The sheer force of the explosion sent debris scattering across the shattered battlefield. His formidable opponent was blasted backward, tumbling through the wreckage, and for a moment the hall was completely silent. The opponent regained his footing, raised his weapon, and the fury in his face had become something else. Something more dangerous. "This ends here," he roared, and the desperation behind it was the kind that makes people do things they can't take back. A stark directive appeared before him. "You must kill Theo Ragnar." A second command followed, colder than the first. You must behead him. A man with piercing blue eyes spoke, revealing a blue key, and the shape of the next phase began to emerge. The scenario quest updated, claim Camellia Palace, and uncover its secrets. And in seeking those secrets, Theo stumbled upon something the quest log hadn't mentioned: a dungeon, sealed and waiting. A notification materialized. You have discovered a dungeon for the first time. Another followed immediately. Experience gained inside the dungeon will be doubled. Theo smiled, so this must be part of a quest. And the smile carried the particular warmth of someone whose luck stat is -49, finding something that actually went right. A massive white wolf emerged from the dungeon's depths, its glowing red eyes finding Theo immediately. The wolf lunged, and Theo dodged the initial attack with the instincts of a man who has been in worse situations than this. He raised his shield, the wolf's fangs crashed against it, and he gritted his teeth and held. Gripping his sword, he muttered, "This guy's," and parried a strike that came faster than he expected. The wolf was extraordinarily fast, its hide proving resistant to anything less than a committed strike. A mediocre attack would accomplish nothing against this beast, and Theo had not survived his past life by relying on mediocre attacks. He wondered if this was another creature from the Demon Sea, cataloging its movements with the focused attention of a man who learns from everything. He recalled the faint light streak that appeared when he blocked his father's sword, and began to understand what it meant. The wolf leaped high, a terrifying silhouette against the dungeon ceiling, and Theo declared, "I can do this." He steeled himself, and the certainty in his voice was the kind that comes not from confidence but from refusal. He recalled a whispered rumor about a legendary figure who single-handedly dismantled the Gyeoryong society, and wondered if the beast before him was connected. A warrior locked in a desperate struggle nearby, while another man shouted a name into the chaos, the situation spiraling faster than anyone could contain. A crowd of shadowy figures watched from the periphery as a booming voice declared, "It's war!" A woman with vibrant blue hair appeared, her voice laced with concern, "Where's Flash Tiger?" And her arrival shifted the weight of the room. A colossal warrior with a fiery red mane let out a thunderous roar, his sword enormous, his presence filling the space around him. He shouted his challenge into the chaos, "I came here to fight Theo Ragnar!" And his target was unmistakable. Theo stood victorious over the defeated wolf, its form still at his feet, his bloodied sword raised in a moment of hard-won triumph. A wide grin spread across his face, genuine, earned, the expression of a man who has survived something that was trying very hard to kill him. His eyes blazed with an otherworldly glow as he held his sword aloft, and the dungeon felt smaller around him than it had when he entered. He survived, and the survival cost him almost everything, including the last of a single precious potion he'd been rationing. Theo clutched his sword and looked at what remained. "Is this the only one I have left?" The question carrying the weight of someone counting what's left after a war. The practice sword, forged from sealback ore, had been carelessly tossed into his room like an afterthought, and it had just kept him alive. A grand celebration erupted in the distance, servants carrying gifts through corridors that didn't know what had just happened underground. Duchess Cecilia greeted her son with a warmth that made the dungeon feel like a different world entirely. "My son, happy birthday!" Theo walked through the icy landscape afterward, and the cold felt appropriate. "The same mistakes I made in my past life," he reflected. "I'm repeating them." The vow renewed itself quietly, without fanfare. A fearsome dragon-type monster loomed above, because the quest wasn't finished, and Theo's luck stat was still -49. The Ragnar name was intrinsically tied to dragon descendants, and now Theo was about to find out exactly what that meant in practice. The ultimate challenge of the quest was a formidable dragon-type monster, and Theo looked at it with the focused calm of someone who has already decided to win. "I'll use one flash," he said, and he began to prepare the kind of attack that doesn't leave room for a second attempt. He activated the skill, and the power of it gathered around him like a storm that had been building for years. The dragon roared, its massive form coiling, and Theo's eyes locked onto its weak point with the precision of a man who has studied his enemy. "If I use the dragon heart to its fullest," he declared, "I might inflict a meaningful blow." The word "might" did a lot of work in that sentence. The colossal dragon lunged, its jaws opening wide, and Theo moved barely, the wind of its passage chilling him to the bone. He aimed to pierce its brain with a glowing blade, the plan forming and executing in the same breath. The dragon countered with an immense surge of power that pushed him back, and he used the distance to observe. Still, he noted, I see a sister's footwork. The observation was strange and specific and clearly meant something only he could understand. He dodged again, the monster's attack sending shockwaves through the arena, and he kept moving. The dragon unleashed a torrent of fiery energy that engulfed the surrounding area, and Theo charged directly into it. His sword glowed with an intense, blinding light as he aimed for the one place where the creature was vulnerable. I have to aim for its weak spot quickly, he muttered, and the determination in his eyes was absolute. Evelyn Nerville engaged a fierce red-haired warrior in a brutal fight that was its own separate war, happening in the same moment as Theo's. Theo Ragnar slew the lesser Drake, and the notification that followed felt almost anticlimactic against the scale of what he'd just done. He stood firm, sword poised for the final strike, and the beast fell. Congratulations. You've successfully hunted a lesser Drake. The words appeared, and Theo read them with the expression of a man filing away a completed task. His quest log updated, Scenario Quest 1, Path of the Heir. He returned to the palace's grand hall, the weight of his victory settling over him with the particular heaviness of things that cost something real. Evelyn observed his arrival with a critical eye, and the concern in her expression was more complex than simple disapproval. Is something going on at the 4th training ground, he asked. And the question carried the instincts of a man who has learned to read the air. A powerful aura erupted around him, crackling with raw energy, the activated skill declaring its presence across the entire battlefield. Lesser Drake Fear dominates the battlefield. And the declaration was not an exaggeration. A shadowy mass engulfed his foes, the battlefield clearing with a speed that made the witnesses go silent. Just get lost already, he roared, and they did. He leveled up to 16, his stats climbing, but the next threat was already arriving before the previous one had finished falling. A challenger burst onto the scene. You're mine, Theo. The voice belonging to someone who had clearly not witnessed the last few minutes. The newcomer identified himself as Black Bear, eager for a fight, his enormous sword already in motion. He charged forward, his blade swinging in a wild, powerful arc, and Theo deftly parried, already aware of the family's combat style. In a blinding flash, Theo's sword blurred through the air, and Black Bear stumbled back with the expression of a man recalibrating rapidly. A decisive blow followed, and Black Bear collapsed, and the crowd that had been watching erupted in stunned, disbelieving cheers. Theo clutched his sword immediately after, his eyes widening in sudden panic. Oh no! Miles away, a young boy shivered uncontrollably in biting snow, and the image of it hit Theo somewhere deep. A gentle voice reached the boy. You still look cold. That won't do at all. Duchess Cecilia offered Theo a steaming plate, abalone, warm, the kind of care that doesn't require explanation. And as he savored the dish, a realization dawned on him, quiet, cold, and entirely at odds with the warmth of the meal. Theo turned his piercing gaze on his mother. Mother, he began, what exactly is your relationship with the magic artisan? The woman with orange hair gasped, caught completely off guard, her composure fracturing in a single moment. Theo's eyes flared with an intense crimson light as he pressed on, and the question hung in the air between them. He declared his purpose. He was there to return a defective product. The elf artisan, pipe in hand, goggles askew, holding a sword, looked utterly confused. Defective? She scoffed, dismissing the notion as ridiculous, but her eyes were already doing the math. So what exactly is the product? Theo asked, and the directness of it left no room for deflection. Duchess Cecilia's composure faltered further as she asked if Theo was implying she was a quarter elf, and the question revealed more than she intended. Theo addressed his mother once more, his tone unwavering. I asked about your relationship with the magic artisan. She finally conceded, her voice barely above a whisper. It's just as you heard. The magic artisan revealed she had taken Cecilia in as her adopted daughter, and the silence that followed had a particular texture. Ah, Theo murmured, so she's your foster. He said it quietly, as if setting a piece into a puzzle he'd been working on for years. Mother loves beautiful things, the artisan explained, and the simplicity of it somehow made it worse. Cecilia asked why Theo was saying these things, and the fragility in her voice was something he hadn't heard from her in a long time. Am I lying? The artisan retorted, and no one in the room answered. She added that she'd never known anything about Cecilia until now, and the admission carried its own complicated weight. I've been such a terrible son, Theo confessed, and the words came from somewhere that the past life hadn't managed to reach. He asked why the artisan hadn't intervened before, in the version of events that ended with everything burning. He asked if she cared about his mother. And the question was more vulnerable than anything else he'd said in this room. The artisan looked at him intently. "Do you?" she asked, and the answer was obvious, which was precisely why the question landed so hard. She pivoted sharply. "You dare play dumb?" Her voice carried the anger of someone who has been patient for a very long time. She demanded to know what happened to her sword, the one forged from an ancient dragon's fang, the one that shouldn't be missing. And as she demanded answers, the truth behind Theo's hidden power began to surface. Not all at once, but in pieces, each one heavier than the last. Theo's blade pulsed with pure light as he raced forward, aiming for the dragon's one vulnerability with everything he had. Evelyn engaged a fierce warrior nearby, their fight a blur of motion against the fiery backdrop, a separate war running parallel to his. Before them, the true form of the Wolbach sword finally materialized, and the sight of it made the air feel different. The master of the intelligence department stood poised, the blade in hand, ready for whatever came next. "This is troublesome," a companion muttered, and the question of what to do next hung heavy and unanswered. A pale-skinned figure with striking red eyes and peculiar goggles grinned from the chaos with the confidence of someone who has already decided the outcome. "This sword is mine now," he declared, and the certainty in his voice was not arrogance, it was recognition. He moved toward the dungeon gate with a glowing blue key, chains writhing and coiling around him as raw energy concentrated. Another man's eyes widened in sheer disbelief. "What's this?" The shock genuine, the confusion total. He stumbled backward, the question escaping him again. "What's happening?" Rose Palace erupted in raging flames, sudden, terrifying, the kind of fire that doesn't start by accident. A cloaked observer with a red scarf watched impassively from above a defeated warrior. The mission had been brutally simple. Overwhelm the gray-haired instructor, shatter Camellia Palace, turn Rose Palace to ash. Another voice cut through the tension with a hint of amusement. "So the plan is to mess with their heads?" He confirmed the grim reality. "This is, without question, a cursed blade." A woman's voice rang out, sharp and dismissive. "The despair you showed me was overcome ages ago, you fool!" She challenged him directly. Did he really think she'd fall for this trick when she had a quest to finish? His eyes ignited with crimson fury as he drove forward. "You belong to me now." A monstrous, dragon-like beast lunged toward a blonde woman already injured and struggling to rise. "Please wake up," a desperate plea, thick chains wrapping around a struggling man, binding him where he stood. A woman pulled him free, her voice carrying the weight of authority. "Reward, ownership of the Wolbach sword." The warrior's mana surged to the level of a high-ranking swordsman as he gripped a pulsating blue crystal. And that raw power was immediately tested, because Theo Ragnar's luck stat was still -49, and the universe was consistent. The elf's magic was devoured completely, and her exclamation of "impossible" carried genuine shock beneath the indignation. She couldn't believe he had learned this technique without magic. The question forming before she could stop it. Did you do this with just the sword's energy? Someone called him a genius, and his red eyes intensified with the focus of a man who doesn't have time to process compliments. The elf's face shifted into something that might have been a grin on anyone else. "You just focus on honing your swordsmanship." She also demanded he contribute to the wall repair costs, and the demand was delivered with the absolute seriousness of someone who has rebuilt walls before. A man in a blue turtleneck observed the fight from a careful distance, noting her incredible speed with the tone of someone who has just revised his threat assessment. "So fast," he muttered, "I didn't even notice her approach." A brilliant clash of swords erupted in a fiery explosion, and the two fighters exchanged blows with the particular intensity of people who respect each other enough to hold nothing back. Theo's swordsmanship had become something his opponent had to work against, not simply absorb. "He's grown strong enough to push me back," the opponent admitted. And the admission cost something. The elf warrior's gaze sharpened, and Theo found himself facing a challenge that required everything the past life had taught him. "Your swordsmanship has truly improved," the elf said, and there was something in the voice that sounded almost like pride. "Even Evelyn herself praised my progress," he added, and the name carried its own particular weight in this context. The surrounding onlookers murmured in awe, their exclamations layering over each other. "He's a genius!" The elf warrior declared with confidence, "If it's you, young Master Theo, you can certainly aim for the top." He even promised to mention Theo's name in his victory speech, a rare honor, offered without ceremony. Another swordsman questioned this with disbelief, while others raised their swords, desperate for recognition, and a stern-faced man observed all of it without expression. His eyes flashed crimson, fixed on a dark orb pulsating with over a decade's worth of concentrated magic. The formal announcement began. Now, the candidates whose names are called will receive. Kale Ragnar, the imposing family head, sat with the particular stillness of a man who knows every member of the clan is watching this moment. The stern man's face contorted with pure rage as he shouted, and the sound of it filled the space completely. A beautiful, unsettling woman smiled, her skin shimmering with scales, a look of distinct pleasure crossing her face. But her pleasure was fleeting, because Theo was remembering his past mistakes, and memory in him was never passive. In the past life, he swallowed soma and couldn't control the mana, the damage to his core severe, lasting, defining. This time, that would not happen. He had been granted permission to use mana, and he intended to use it correctly. Now it was time to unleash the power he'd been managing, shaping, containing, and the containment was about to end. It felt almost anticlimactic succeeding this cleanly. But the magic artisan had warned him about soma, and he had listened. Without careful management, the mana hole risked permanent damage, and Ragnar's with greater talent carried more risk, not less. A figure bathed in blue energy meditated, hands clasped, the focus in his posture absolute. A sword flashed, emitting blue energy, engulfing another figure in a light that was beautiful and dangerous in equal measure. A massive ice construct began to form, draconic, crackling, enormous, and the fourth-ranked warrior launched his assault against it. The sheer power of the ice dragon construct was overwhelming, and the warrior pressed his attack with the determination of someone who doesn't know how to stop. Theo strode forward, sword in hand, his red eyes fixed on the path ahead. A massive cracked monument dominated a desolate field littered with discarded swords, the graveyard of attempts that didn't make it this far. "Finally!" Theo cried out, his voice echoing across the field. "Now I can stand on the same ground as everyone else." The white-haired warrior ignited his sword with crackling red energy and engaged an unseen foe in a clash that exploded outward in a blinding flash. The cracked monument stood as a silent witness, and Theo passed it without slowing. The fourth-ranked warrior unleashed a devastating strike against the icy construct, and the impact shook the ground. The captain of the White Dragon Squad and the prodigy with the blue scarf stared, their faces etched with the particular astonishment of people watching something they weren't prepared for. Theo continued his advance, his sword a symbol of the vow he had carried through 2 lives. The white-haired warrior was officially recognized as first place in the inaugural blooming ceremony, the top position secured. But even as the victory was celebrated, something was moving in the spaces between the celebration. The competition results were announced, and the arena buzzed with the particular energy of a crowd that doesn't yet know what it's actually witnessing. The announcer declared the white-haired warrior second place, and the crowd processed that ranking without understanding its implications. He stood tall, a determined glint in his eyes, ready for whatever the next phase demanded. The crowd erupted as Theo Ragnar's name was called, the cheers deafening, the celebration genuine, the danger entirely invisible within it. The prodigy with the blue scarf looked utterly bewildered by the sudden announcements, which was, in its own way, the most honest response in the room. Another young man with striking white hair and a blue scarf received a hearty congratulation and felt a surge of power unlike anything he'd imagined. High above, on a desolate snowy peak, the dark-haired warrior with the fur-lined cloak stood solitary, his gaze lost in the winter expanse. A figure emerged, clad in a crisp white uniform and stark black gloves. Dark hair, red eyes, the bearing of someone who has already decided everything. This mysterious individual was proclaimed the true master of the 4th training ground, and the proclamation landed with the weight of a challenge. He declared boldly that the white-haired warrior and the dragon of the skies were the actual threats, and his certainty was not bravado, it was intelligence. He vowed to dismantle them, using every strategy available to him, and the vow carried the particular texture of something said for the 3rd time, each iteration heavier than the last. A tense confrontation ignited as a swordsman faced a hooded figure who pleaded desperately, "Wait, hold on!" The hooded figure insisted they weren't suspicious, But their actions were writing a different story entirely. A woman wielding a fiery weapon appeared, extending an invitation to join the elite Black Iron Cavalry with the casual authority of someone who doesn't expect to be refused. "So, what do you think?" she asked. And the offer beneath the question was a squad leader position, a guaranteed path forward. Excitement rippled through the onlookers. "It's the Bureau of Law. The director himself has arrived." Someone questioned the necessity of enduring this much humiliation, and the question had no clean answer. The Lady of the Plum Blossom Palace made her entrance, sword in hand, and the air in the room changed immediately. A brutal scene erupted, a man screaming in agony, blood staining the ground, and the sword dragon moved through it with the ease of someone performing a familiar task. A warrior in a white cloak with burning red eyes launched a savage assault, and his opponent was simply not equipped to withstand it. The victor's red eyes blazed as he declared, "I'll show you how to make it Theo Ragnar's grave." He stood enveloped in a swirling vortex of red energy, and the declaration hung in the air with the weight of a promise. The Lady of the Plum Blossom Palace was not born to this power. She was crafted by it, shaped by decades of a sword that demanded everything. A uniformed figure and a shadowed companion watched the spectacle with the careful attention of people cataloging a threat. The sword dragon readied her fighting style, and the word unparalleled was not an exaggeration. She boasted that her techniques were unlike anything witnessed before, and the confidence in her voice was the kind that comes from never having been wrong. Her blade pulsed with power, infused with an endless array of unique variations, each one a different way to end something. A blinding luminescence flared from her sword, signaling the move she called Heaven's Flower Rain. The sky cracked open, and what emerged from that crack was ancient and grotesque, and carried the particular menace of something that has been waiting a very long time. A harbinger from the cursed demon sea, and the sword dragon's presence seemed to have called it forward deliberately. Theo watched the dramatic scene with the focused attention of a man filing away everything he observed. The white-haired warrior watched too, his mind clearly formulating a plan that he hadn't shared with anyone in the room. A voice instructed him, "Stick to the plan." And the instruction suggested the plan was already in motion. "Then that place will soon become Theo's grave," they declared. And the prophecy hung in the air with the chill of something that believed itself inevitable. Chaos erupted as the fierce battle commenced, panicked onlookers scattering in every direction. A stern man in uniform issued a decree, no restrictions on their actions, and the implications of that decree unfolded immediately. "That means you can steal someone else's prey or bell," he clarified. "Brutal rules for a brutal competition." A lone figure launched from a cliff's edge, the daring act igniting the pandemonium below. Two warriors with fiery red hair charged forward, their eyes alight with the particular eagerness of people who have been waiting for exactly this. "It's going to be so fun!" one of them shouted, and the joy in it was completely genuine, which made it somehow more alarming. A knight engaged another swordsman in a blinding clash, their eyes glowing with a supernatural intensity that suggested neither of them was operating within normal parameters. The stakes were sky-high for every soul caught in the crossfire, and the crossfire was everywhere. The entire Ragnar family observed the unfolding events, with the family head presiding over the spectacle with the grim attention of a man who has seen this before. His palpable rage hinted at a personal vendetta driving his fury, something older than this ceremony, something that had been waiting for an occasion. The beautiful, unsettling woman smiled, her scales shimmering with a pleasure that was entirely disconnected from what the pleasure was about. The white-haired warrior stood ready in the snow, a glowing orb in his hand, and the landscape around him was the kind of white that hides everything. He called out, "Come out now," and the invitation was not for anyone friendly. A scarred man grinned widely, one of the notorious three roughnecks of Book Mountain, his grim companions flanking him. These men were responsible for massacring civilians, a grim side effect of Ragnar's pursuits that no one had been held accountable for. The white-haired warrior's eyes narrowed, sensing movement in the stark white landscape, his instincts already ahead of his conscious mind. "Furthermore," he muttered, "they've been following me." The observation was quiet and carried the weight of someone who has been tracking this for a while. A hooded man with a striking red scarf emerged from the tree line. "So the Senate sent you," the white-haired warrior stated, not a question, a confirmation of something he'd already suspected. The hooded man laughed, and the confirmation in the laughter was its own kind of answer. Seeing that the examiner didn't follow us, the figure taunted, and the implication of the examiner's absence was not lost. "It seems he's working with you," the white-haired warrior deduced, and the deduction landed with the precision of someone who has been doing this kind of calculation his entire life. Some heirs are born into luxury, others are born into war. This one was born into a path that only he could walk. The three roughnecks launched their coordinated assault, eager, experienced, expecting an easy conclusion. The white-haired warrior moved with blinding speed, his sword a blur, and his blade's power manifested as a colossal blue dragon's maw. It engulfed the attackers, and the scarred man's shriek carried across the snow before it was swallowed by silence. The white-haired warrior finished the scarred man with a brutal finality and turned his gaze toward a sheer cliff face. An invisible staircase waited there, impossible, ethereal, and exactly the kind of thing that appears in quests designed to test whether you're paying attention. A quest notification flashed: "Find the invisible staircase and explore the blue caves." A disembodied voice echoed, "The entrance is this way." And the invitation had the qualities of something that had been waiting to be accepted. A stern-faced man with glasses and a mustache materialized, his laughter booming with the satisfaction of someone whose plan just executed perfectly. "It seems those roughnecks did their job perfectly," he cackled, and the delight in it was the delight of a man who trusts his instruments. The white-haired warrior stepped onto the ethereal stairs, which solidified under his weight, leading him down into the blue caves. He descended, and the mysteries below began to unfold around him with the particular patience of things that have been waiting a very long time. A lone figure stood before the colossal dragon roadbroke, a stark silhouette against a hoard of gold that stretched beyond the limits of the cave. Roadbroke's ancient yellow eyes flared with immense power, pinning the visitor with a gaze that had seen centuries. "Greetings, ancestor," the figure called out, reverence woven into every syllable. The dragon questioned the warrior's sudden appearance, wondering if his timing was off, if false rumors had reached him, if he had simply arrived too soon. "I returned here before Huxiel," Roadbroke mused, "after such a long time." The ancient weariness in the voice was its own kind of power. The dragon's immense form began to writhe, his eyes burning with intensified light, and the cave felt smaller. A deafening roar erupted from Roadbroke, the kind of sound that doesn't just fill a space but reshapes it. He declared his unwavering intent to uphold a sacred covenant established at the very dawn of time. This ancient pact permitted the Chosen One, who successfully navigated his trials, to pose three crucial questions. And as a reward for their bravery, they could claim the ancient dragon's legendary, immeasurable treasures. In a brutal duel, a warrior in a white cloak clashed with a massive wolf, each strike a testament to ferocity, each parry a testament to survival. His sword moved with blinding speed against the monstrous beast, and the wolf's glowing red eyes met the warrior's own burning gaze. "Because the one who wants to kill Theo," the warrior declared, "is me." The declaration was not a threat, it was a claim of ownership. The white-haired warrior pressed his relentless assault, shattering the wolf's defenses with the accumulated force of every blow that came before. With a final brutal strike, the wolf fell, and the silence that followed was the kind that settles after something irreversible. A spectator with purple skin remarked that the white-haired warrior was definitely a good one, and the understatement carried its own particular weight. A voice whispered of a terrifying monster lurking at the world's edge, the nameless monarch, a being once divided from a colossal dragon. A shadowy figure materialized, its eyes burning with a chilling, malevolent light, and the air around it felt wrong in a way that was difficult to articulate. As the word fear echoed through the cave, the white-haired warrior found himself facing a colossal obsidian dragon. The ancient dragon posed a chilling offer: "Choose anything you want, and I'll give it to you." A warrior faced with that offer unleashed his true, terrifying power, and the cave was not large enough to contain what followed. The lesser drake's words hung in the air with the dismissiveness of something ancient addressing something it considers temporary. "I told you already." A terrifying roar erupted from the dragon, filling the entire space with a dread that pressed against the lungs. Then the beast unleashed its dragon fear, a wave of pure terror that moved through the cave like a tide. The warrior staggered, the overwhelming onslaught of the dragon's power threatening to crush him where he stood. With massive jaws gaping wide, the dragon bellowed, "You punk!" So you saying you want all the treasures here along with my knowledge by playing with words? The dragon's fury was the fury of something that has been tricked before and remembers it. The warrior's eyes began to glow fierce red, an immense aura surrounding his entire form, and the vow he carried through everything was visible in those eyes. A guardian dragon's fear, he declared, his voice carrying the shock of recognition. His face contorted with pure rage, is in this nest. Then, you didn't say that Lodbrok is not included as a treasure. And the technicality was deployed with the precision of a man who has been thinking about this for a very long time. The dragon unleashed its red drake fear, and a new wave of terror hit the cave, harder than the first. The warrior roared in defiance, blood and sweat plastering his hair to his face, and he did not move from where he stood. This man had walked into a dragon's lair on purpose, and his desperate plea might change the shape of everything that followed. "Please, just give Lodbrok to me," he begged, and the vulnerability in it was the most honest thing he'd shown anyone in years. "You gave me your word on this." His voice was firm, and the firmness of it was the firmness of someone who has nothing left to lose and knows it. He launched himself forward, a blur of impossible speed, and the dragon unleashed another fiery blast that he wove through like a ghost. Then a stunning woman in a dark, elegant gown materialized before them, her eyes holding a chilling, predatory gleam, a sharp-toothed smile spreading across her face. "Actually," she confessed, "I lost my dragon heart 50 years ago. So I'm just waiting for the day I'll finally die," she continued, and the ancient weariness in her voice made the cave feel very quiet. "At most, I'll live for 3 more years." She turned her unsettling gaze to the warrior and declared, "I'll be in your care, my new companion." He stared at her, utterly bewildered, his eyes dropping to the book clutched in her hand, the relic labeled Amon. And the power of that relic was already beginning to manifest, corrupting the air around it in ways that had no clean category. A dark orb pulsed with malevolent purple energy, not just glowing, but actively amplifying a sealed monster's power. This sinister orb also served as a barrier, keeping any other rampaging monsters from approaching the immediate area. A hand shot out with impossible grip and crushed the glowing orb into fine dust, and the raw power behind that simple action was staggering. With the orb gone, the true horror was unleashed. A massive serpentine creature with eyes burning like embers roared into full existence. A man with dark hair and a gaze as stern as granite observed the newly summoned beast with an expression that gave nothing away. He possessed the terrifying ability to summon any monster he desired, bending them to his will with the casual authority of someone who has been doing this for years. More monstrous beasts began to emerge from the shadows, their guttural roars echoing through the snow-covered landscape. He understood their roars perfectly, a primal demand for him to use the orb once more, to call what it was designed to call. That orb was specifically designed to lure out Theo, that infuriatingly sentimental young man who always got in the way of the cleaner version of events. Theo had a terrible habit of attaching himself to unnecessary things, especially the people gathered at the 4th training ground, the ones he called his followers. These followers were, by any objective measure, the absolute dregs of the training system, and Theo cared about them with a ferocity that made no strategic sense. The white-haired warrior sat in the biting snow, his piercing red eyes glowing with an intensity that the darkness around him couldn't absorb. He had initially joined the effort to catch Theo out of pure frustration, but now the whole situation felt like a cruel twist of fate that he hadn't accounted for. The sheer force of his fury erupted, raw, untamed, the kind of power that doesn't ask permission before it arrives. Bruised but unyielding, another warrior rose and vowed, "I'll drag you out, no matter the cost." The hunt had begun. A relentless horde surged forward with grim purpose, and a warrior clad in white drew his blade with the calm of someone who has already decided the outcome. His sole objective: eliminate the rabble at the 4th training ground, hunt them all until Theo finally revealed himself. From the shadows, a pale-haired man watched, speaking of raw strength, advocating for trampling others as the only true path to the Ragnar throne. "The weak must be eliminated," he warned, and the decree echoed in the cold air with the chill of something that had been decided long before this moment. A figure in a dark coat observed this conversation from nearby, and the expression on his face was the expression of a man cataloging a threat. A dark-haired man with glowing red eyes spoke ominously of the Ragnar throne. "I will become the Northern Sovereign and take it." The proclamation landed with the weight of something that had been building for a very long time, and the man who said it believed every word. The fourth-ranked warrior was suddenly pulled into the picture, brought in by forces that had been moving her toward this moment for weeks. A participant with dark hair and red eyes demanded answers. "So where are they? Where is the white-haired warrior waiting for me?" Another fighter sneered, "I'll prove a bastard like you won't surpass me." And the particular venom in it suggested this rivalry had history. Theo turned to the injured woman, his voice carrying a warning, "Careful!" He drew his sword and the woman gasped. "You?" The recognition in her voice arriving before she could stop it. He noticed the wounds on the sword, and a realization began forming, quiet and specific. Reading the memories of the sword's owner, he murmured, "The fourth-ranked warrior." The ability activated with the precision of a man who has learned to trust it. His eyes blazed red as he gripped the sword, the power of it igniting around him. A vibrant blue aura enveloped him, and the fight that was coming began to take shape in his mind before it arrived. "You can't go alone!" he shouted, and the urgency in it was the urgencies of someone who has watched this specific mistake before. The woman retorted with equal urgency, "This is a trap meant to kill you." "Let's find the other survivors," she pleaded, and the plea carried the weight of someone who has already lost people to traps exactly like this one. "Where are they?" he roared again, and before him loomed a colossal shadowy entity, draconic and enormous. The man's eyes blazed with fury as he shouted the white-haired warrior's name into the chaos, the name a demand, not a greeting. The white-haired warrior was being called, and it was clear from every angle that he was in grave danger. The woman cried out, You're dead?" The shock in her voice genuine, the math of the situation finally catching up with her. "Even if there are sacrifices, you have to," she began. "I don't want to," he interrupted, and the rawness of it was the rawness of someone who has already watched too many sacrifices happen. "This is Ragnar," he declared, and the pride in it was fierce and complicated and entirely his own. The injured woman reappeared, bleeding and terrified, screaming a name that carried the weight of someone watching something irreversible happen. The white-haired warrior stared up at the colossal dragon's face, the nameless monarch, ancient and vast and entirely indifferent to his survival. He unleashed a powerful sword strike that made the beast roar in pain, and the sound of its pain was the first honest thing the cave had offered. A warrior watched, his resolve hardening, as he gripped his sword, and the hardening of resolve in him was always the beginning of something significant. The beast swiped again, claws tearing through the air. The white-haired warrior moved with blinding agility and parried, sparks flying in the snowy forest. His eyes blazed with fierce determination. They had to defeat this monster, and the "had to" carried no alternatives. A voice boomed, "I will be able to catch the white-haired warrior," and the claws descended. Blood splattered as the dragon's third claw struck, leaving a severed limb, and the white-haired warrior gritted his teeth and stared at the beast's glowing purple eyes. A woman with ornate armor watched grimly from a distance, her bloodied uniform a testament to what this competition had already cost. Theo appeared in the distance, surrounded by cloaked men, and the sight of him arriving changed the shape of what was possible. One man stated it plainly. 4 senior high-ranking prosecutors had been sent to kill Theo, and the number was chosen to ensure the outcome. Theo's face was stern, his eyes burning with an intense, dark light, the expression of a man who was told 4 people were coming for him, and decided that was manageable. The woman in the bloodied uniform watched the unfolding chaos with a sharp, unwavering gaze, cataloging, assessing, already thinking 3 moves ahead. The beast unleashed another savage swipe, a blow the white-haired warrior barely evaded, the wind of it close enough to move his hair. A warrior spotted an opening and roared, "Move!" and the white-haired warrior reacted instantly, the trust between them absolute. With a furious roar, the beast's jaws snapped shut on empty air, and the warrior charged forward, his sword a blur. The beast's massive form shuddered violently, its fur now matted with dark blood, and the tide of the fight was shifting. The white-haired warrior stood his ground, sword raised high, and the text that materialized above him felt like a declaration from the story itself. The real power of Ragnar. His sword began to thrum with intense red energy, signaling the ultimate attack, and the energy of it made the air feel dangerous. He unleashed 1,000 dragons roar, and the wave of raw power that followed was the kind that doesn't leave room for a second attempt. The beast recoiled, overwhelmed, its furious roars morphing into cries of pure agony, and the energy blast engulfed it completely. But victory came at a price, and the price was the kind that doesn't announce itself until after the celebration. The question hung heavy in the space. Should the white-haired warrior betray his own bloodline and side with Theo? The internal conflict fueled the rising tension in a way that external threats couldn't, because external threats didn't know where to aim. Axion Ragnar, the name itself carried immense weight, immense expectation, and a history that had been shaping him since before he understood what history was. A young version of him, knife in hand, stood poised for action, already knowing the goal, already committed to the cost. He knew the ultimate objective: seize control of Ragnar's formidable power, ensure Troyvan's dominion, honor his uncle and his mother. The Ragnar surname, he had realized, was merely a hollow vessel, its true strength belonging to something else, something that could be taken. He was, in truth, a Troyvan, and that revelation had reshaped everything he thought he was. Then Theo made his entrance, and everything changed again. He stood shoulder to shoulder with the white-haired warrior, a united front, and their combined presence was something the room hadn't accounted for. This was the moment everything had been building toward, and the weight of it was visible in every face present. Theo had arrived, and his appearance signaled a turning point that couldn't be undone. "You moved exactly as I predicted," the mastermind observed, and the plan unfolded with the quiet satisfaction of something that had been designed to work. A brutal clash erupted between the white-haired warrior and a skilled swordsman, each blow echoing with the deadly intent of people who understand the stakes. The air crackled with the raw power of their duel, and the speed of the exchange left no room for error. The white-haired warrior parried a swift strike, his blade a blur against his opponent's, and the sheer speed of it made the watching crowd go silent. A devastating clash of steel rang out as their swords met with explosive force, sparks illuminating the intensity of the moment. A masked figure intervened, launching a surprise attack directly at the white-haired warrior with a speed that suggested this ambush had been planned for days. "He broke my sword with his bare hands," the white-haired warrior stammered, disbelief etched on his face as his weapon shattered. This opponent was unlike anyone he'd ever faced, and the realization of it arrived with the particular chill of a man understanding he has underestimated something. With a roar, the masked assailant unleashed a devastating barrage, overwhelming the white-haired warrior's defenses, each strike packed with a ferocity that felt personal. The mask was ripped away, and the face beneath it was the gray-haired instructor's, a man the white-haired warrior knew but never expected to see in this role. The revelation changed everything, the context of every previous interaction rewriting itself in a single moment. A chilling grin spread across the unmasked man's face, predatory and entirely at ease with the chaos he'd created. Axion Ragnar, the unmasked man, pronounced the name with a mocking tone, and the white-haired warrior stood frozen, the name landing differently now that he knew who was saying it. The gray-haired instructor unleashed a devastating attack, a final powerful blow aimed directly at the white-haired warrior. The outcome hung in the balance, and the balance was not even. But the white-haired warrior's warning about Theo's assassination loomed large over everything. Larger than the fight, larger than the pain. Someone had planned to eliminate Theo during Ragnar's blooming ceremony, and that plan was already in motion. The looming threat hung heavy over the second blooming ceremony like weather that everyone could feel but no one could stop. A warrior with red hair arrived, actively seeking Theo, only to find him absent, her expression shifting from anticipation to disappointment. "I followed because I thought I'd meet Theo Ragnar," she declared, and the candor of it was its own kind of statement. "But I don't see him," she added, and the quest for the heir remained unfulfilled, which meant it remained active. A burly ally urged them onward. "We must go," and then turned to his companion. "You're coming with us, right?" The white-haired warrior, seeing an opportunity, offered the red-haired warrior a deal, believing her help was vital to what came next. "If you help me this time," he promised, "it will be a great help." He sealed the pact with his word, and his word had always been the most reliable thing about him. A dark figure attacked with blinding speed, and another warrior met the onslaught head-on, their blades clashing in a violent spectacle that sent shockwaves through the air. Theo observed the unfolding pandemonium with dark hair and piercing red eyes, the particular stillness of a man who is already 3 moves ahead. The relentless attacker pressed their assault, each movement a fluid, deadly dance, and the defender struggled desperately to keep pace as the blood splattered across snow-dusted ground. A desperate chase ignited. Figures on horseback thundered through a stark, snowy forest, pursued by forces that didn't intend to let them reach wherever they were going. A lone warrior fought with fierce, unwavering determination at the heart of the main conflict, caught in a whirlwind of raw energy as another powerful warrior aggressively engaged. Then Theo emerged from the fray, dark hair, red eyes, the bearing of a man who has arrived at exactly the right moment and knows it. A cloaked figure exclaimed, "The young master," before another confirmed urgently, "Yes, he's here." Theo moved with astonishing power, his sword unleashing a blinding torrent of pure light, and he struck down his opponents with a shocking ease that made the surrounding chaos feel irrelevant. A warrior with blazing red eyes glared with the particular intensity of someone consumed by a burning rage that has been building for a very long time. The cloaked figure lunged forward, their blades met with a devastating, thunderous impact, and in that clash, the true power of the warrior who had been watching finally made itself known. The beast recoiled, its roars turning to agony from the devastating blast, and a masked figure lunged at the warrior in white, sword flashing in a desperate defense. Another masked assailant joined the fray, striking viciously from the side, and the warrior in white managed to dodge the initial blow before a heavy impact sent him stumbling. Blood sprayed from his mouth as he reeled from the brutal hit, and a pale-haired man watched from the shadows, speaking of raw strength with the detachment of someone who considers suffering a useful tool. He declared the weak utterly useless, advocating for trampling others as the only true path to claim the Ragnar throne. The weak must be eliminated, he warned, and the decree carried the particular chill of something said by someone who has already decided who counts as weak. A figure in a dark coat observed this conversation, and the expression on his face was the expression of a man who has just confirmed something he suspected. A dark-haired man with glowing red eyes proclaimed, "I will become the Northern Sovereign and take the throne." And the proclamation carried the weight of someone who has been planning this for years. Someone shouted in disbelief, "That crazy bastard!" And the white-haired warrior, drenched in blood, unleashed another devastating energy wave. Another figure screamed, "No, no way!" And the shock in it was the shock of someone watching a certainty dissolve. A stern man in a dark uniform with short black hair observed the chaos with the careful attention of someone cataloging everything for later. The masked figure who had attacked the warrior in white cried out in pain, and the man who had driven his blade through a foe dropped to one knee, understanding dawning on his face. "A piece of trash like you," the unmasked attacker declared, "can easily be torn to shreds," and the contempt in it was the contempt of someone who has never once been made to feel small. The warrior in white cried out Theo's name with tears streaming down his face, and the desperation in it was the desperation of a man who has run out of options. Theo stood silently in the snowy forest, dark hair contrasting with his fur-lined cloak, and the silence around him was the silence of someone making a decision. The unmasked attacker continued his relentless assault, red eyes glowing with pure malice, and the fury in his movements was the fury of something that has been given permission to stop pretending. The masked man's grin stretched wide, a chilling testament to the chaos he'd unleashed, a performance he was genuinely enjoying. His voice, laced with contempt, spat out the white-haired warrior's name, and the white-haired warrior froze, a knot of pure dread tightening in his gut. The gray-haired instructor launched his final devastating strike directly at the white-haired warrior, and a figure cloaked in shadows watched with wide, horrified eyes. Blood streamed from the lips of the cloaked figure as he gasped, "Young master!" His body crumpled and a furious voice screamed, "Kill him! Kill that bastard!" And a wave of dark-cloaked assassins flooded the area. The white-haired warrior met the surge of attackers with eyes blazing in unyielding fury, pulling his sword free, steel glinting as he braced for the brutal clash. A warrior with fiery red hair charged into the fray, blades immediately locking with the white-haired warriors, the air crackling with energy as their swords collided in a blinding shower of sparks. The sword dragon entered the fray, her own blade engaging the red-haired fighter, and her presence changed the geometry of the battle immediately. Their swords clashed in a blinding flash, but the sword dragon skillfully dodged a powerful strike and countered with a swift, deadly move. The white-haired warrior found himself facing a new, formidable threat, and the timing of it was the timing of something orchestrated. A hulking brute charged, savage smile widening, his massive sword swinging down, and the white-haired warrior parried the heavy blow with the efficiency of someone who has been fighting since before he could articulate what fighting was. He deflected the immense force, causing the brute to roar in pure frustration, and then the brute lunged again, and the white-haired warrior seized the moment. The loyal young apprentice, only 17, shouted a warning from somewhere in the chaos. Trouble! And the word carried the particular urgency of someone who has spotted something the fighters haven't. A shadowy cloaked figure stood ominously nearby, dark cloak stained with fresh blood, and a commanding voice broke the tension. Please give us your decision! Demonic entities resembling fiery dragons manifested, their terrifying roars echoing through the battlefield, and these monstrous beasts had already caused a massacre. All remaining candidates had been exterminated, and as the dust settled, a new ceremony began, promising a revelation that would rewrite the rules of what came next. The Ragnar clan's blooming ceremony was reaching its climax, and one participant's hidden power was about to rewrite everything that anyone in that room thought they understood. The Ascendant Dragon officially declared the conclusion of the survival round, presenting a scroll whose ancient words were now laid bare for all to see. The final tally showed 1,121 points, a testament to the grueling survival phase and everything it had cost. A hushed murmur rippled through the assembled participants. As expected, it's Theo Ragnar again. And the whisper carried the particular quality of a crowd revising its assumptions. The Ascendant Dragon raised his voice, announcing the commencement of the critical third round. And the boy who returned from death with a vow and a dragon heart stood ready for it. We now begin the third round of the blooming ceremony, he proclaimed with solemn authority, and the weight of the proclamation settled over the assembled participants like a change in gravity. Only those who had earned their qualification would be permitted to advance, and the list of those who remained was shorter than anyone had anticipated. Intricate bells, each inscribed with cryptic words, were presented as the next challenge, and the challenge was deceptively simple in its presentation. Your task, the Ascendant Dragon instructed, is to collect these bells and learn the wisdom held within their inscriptions. Theo's eyes blazed with an otherworldly light, his unique ability activating with the quiet certainty of something that has been waiting for exactly this moment. His extraordinary hatchling synchronization allowed him to perceive the thoughts of things, and the inscribed words transformed into vivid, comprehensible images within his mind. The white-haired warrior fought with fierce, shattering determination, pushing his limits in a way that suggested he had decided the limits were suggestions. Theo unleashed a torrent of blue energy, his surging power overwhelming the monstrous form before him. He saw his past life, a stark reminder of a different version of this moment, a missed opportunity that had cost everyone around him everything. In my past life, he recalled, the fourth-ranked warrior and the prodigy couldn't master the breathing method. The memory was specific and painful and useful. He wondered if his current actions had caused this change, the butterfly effect of a man who came back and couldn't help touching things differently. Is this because of what I inadvertently created? The question hung in the air without an answer, which was its own kind of answer. He felt the immense power of thunder surge through his being, and he commanded it with the precision of someone who has been practicing this in his mind for years. Grant, express, control, expand, solidify. The commands moved through him like a language he was born knowing. He pushed further, gathering immense golden energy around him, and he had finally reached the expand level, his power now truly immense. A terrifying draconic silhouette appeared as a crimson abyss ripped open the sky, and the sight of it made the remaining candidates go very still. The third round of Ragnar's blooming ceremony, face to face with the family head, had officially begun. Under a blood-red sky, the imposing castle loomed as the grim-faced lord of the house observed the proceedings with the attention of a man who has been waiting for this. Theo strained to sense something, a flicker of unease growing within him, and the unease had a specific texture, a specific direction. "Why can I feel Lodbrok's energy from there?" he murmured, and the question was the kind that doesn't wait for a comfortable moment to arrive. A vast red energy erupted, and Theo's eyes widened in absolute disbelief. No way! The whisper carrying the shock of a man whose intelligence has just been outpaced by events. A cloaked figure brandishing a glowing object and a sword materialized. A clear and immediate threat, and the threat was not hypothetical. A disembodied voice questioned the chaos. Did he take Lodbrok's heart? And the question landed with the weight of something enormous going wrong. The gray-haired instructor stood among the remaining candidates in his formal uniform, observing the unfolding events with the careful attention of a man who is always watching. The white-haired warrior and the red-haired warrior stood poised, their gazes fixed on the prize of leadership, and the competition between them was not simple. A man with dark hair and red eyes declared with chilling conviction, "We should interfere with the opposite wavelength and remove its burden on us." A cautious voice questioned the strategy. "Are you absolutely sure about this plan?" And the confirmation came back firm and resolute. The warrior in white battled a ferocious beast as the sword dragon watched, her concern for Theo Ragnar a heavy weight she hadn't expected to be carrying. "I'm worried he'll get seriously hurt," the sword dragon voiced, her gaze fixed on the young heir, with the particular concerns of someone who has revised their assessment of him upward. She fretted over his ability to withstand the immense pressure, and over the others who might seek to control what he was becoming. Two women declared with ambition lighting their faces, "The days of merely crafting armor are officially over for us." The other chimed in, "It's time we start making and selling every kind of accessory imaginable." And the excitement in it was the excitement of people who have just understood what they're standing next to. The lord of the house let out a hearty laugh, pleased, and we also have the youth that no one can possibly stop. He surveyed a field filled with gleaming swords, his voice hardening. "If anyone dares to stand in our way, I will simply eliminate them." The ancient dragon Roadbroke appeared, its yellow eyes blazing, and a chilling question materialized. Is this truly a regressor? The dragon's appearance confirmed the dire warning about Theo's fate, and the warning had been building toward this moment for a very long time. Someone had planned to eliminate Theo during Ragnar's blooming ceremony, and the true scale of that threat was now visible to everyone who had been paying attention. Dark, explosive energy erupted across the battlefield, a terrifying display of raw power that made the ground shake. Theo watched the scene unfold, a single question on his lips. What is all this? And the question was not rhetorical. It was the question of a man reassessing his position in real time. His gaze drifted to a field littered with scattered swords, the aftermath of something that had been moving toward this moment for longer than he'd realized. A cloaked figure's blades clashed violently in the chaos, a deadly dance that had no audience left to appreciate its precision. Theo raised his own sword, its dark metal gleaming ominously in the charged air, and he declared that this was a position only the strongest warriors could maintain. The family head's eyes ignited with crimson intensity, a grim smile touching his lips, the expression of a man who has been waiting for exactly this test. The white-haired warrior looked on, a question forming for Theo, asking if anyone could still stand here, noting that thousands had already fallen. "Can you still answer the same thing?" he pressed, even after feeling their hatred. And the question was the most honest thing he'd asked in a long time. A monstrous blue entity roared its fury directly at the family head. "Kale! Kill!" And the vow that followed was the vow of something ancient and specific. "I'll curse you for the rest of my life." And the curse carried the weight of something that had been waiting centuries for the right moment to be spoken. As the blooming ceremony reached its peak, the masked family head confronted a mysterious power with the fierce determination of a man who has never once considered backing down. The white-haired warrior drew his blade, the air crackling with anticipation, and the preparation in his posture was the preparation of someone who has decided. Theo looked upward, his expression solemn, and stated, "I don't need a regressor who will only cause harm to the family." His gaze was unwavering. "It's better for me to lose my mind or die here than to rely on such a crutch." The vow, spoken for the third time, carried the weight of all three iterations. A towering spectral figure emerged from the shadows, ethereal and radiating immense power, and its presence changed the air in the way that genuinely ancient things do. The spirit declared, and killed both the gray-haired instructor and the white-haired warrior, a chilling pronouncement hanging in the air. With a dismissive wave, the spectral figure stated, "Yeah, I can leave now," and its presence began to fade with the particular indifference of something that was never here for anyone's benefit but its own. The spectral figure unleashed a blinding light, an intense flash that momentarily overwhelmed all sight and left the battlefield ringing with silence. A draconic being surveyed its surroundings, surrounded by numerous bears, its voice echoing with authority. We have to choose the strongest. The Sky Dragon director observed these unfolding events with an expression that gave nothing away. And the nothing it gave away was deliberate. A dark egg cracked, revealing a single malevolent red eye. And the sight of it carried the particular chill of something beginning that cannot be stopped once it has started. Two majestic dragons erupted into the sky, their powerful forms now in full flight, and Theo watched the spectacle unfold, keenly aware of the large group of followers trailing him. A crisp blue interface materialized. "You have ranked up." And Theo read it with the expression of a man who has earned something and knows exactly what it cost. He questioned an ether core, a sense of accomplishment washing over him, the long, arduous quest finally reaching a moment of resolution. The Sky Dragon director confronted Theo with the chilling certainty of someone who has already seen how this ends. Nothing will go according to your plan. He addressed Theo directly, bestowing upon him the title of Sky Dragon. And the title landed with the weight of a challenge dressed as an honor. The family head's voice bellowed across the space. "Are you all stupid?" The fury in it, the fury of a man who has been watching people make avoidable mistakes. "Who here doesn't want revenge?" he demanded. And the question was not rhetorical, it was a census. The Sky Dragon director offered a sly smile. "But your acting is very good." And the observation carried the particular quality of someone who has been watching the performance for a while. He probed deeper, asking about rounds in regression, questioning whether Theo Ragnar was indeed a regressor, and the question carried the weight of someone who already suspected the answer. From her throne, the former family head spoke, her gaze sharp and knowing, the gaze of a woman who has been in this room before, in a different version of this conversation. Her revelation cut through the tension. "You don't need to hide it, because I'm also a regressor." And the silence that followed was the silence of a room processing something enormous. The family head had just declared the end of the ceremony. But a surprising figure stepped forward, revealing her rounds were all spent. This mysterious woman was the former family head, a formidable warrior challenging the current order with the calm authority of someone who has already decided she's going to win. She turned her attention to Theo, offering him a position as her disciple, and the offer carried the weight of something that would change the shape of everything that followed. The allure deepened as she mentioned the Ascendant Dragon Institute was currently accepting new students, and the invitation was not casual. She promised Theo access to hidden secrets, urging him to seek her out. And the promise was the promise of someone who has secrets worth the seeking. A shadowy silhouette of a dragon appeared, its mournful howl echoing through the tense atmosphere, and the haunting cry posed a cryptic question. "Lodbrok's heart?" Theo stood firm, his expression hardening with a newfound determination, the expression of a man who has just been handed the next chapter of the vow he's been carrying since the first life. The former family head was fully revealed, her presence commanding and her gaze sharp, the gaze of a woman who has seen enough versions of this story to know which parts matter. She reiterated her declaration. Her available rounds for this confrontation were now completely exhausted, and the admission carried the weight of someone who has been spending something finite for a very long time. She extended her offer once more to Theo, promising him profound secrets of both the world and the Ragnar family itself. As the dragon's howl faded, the enigmatic question hung in the air. "Lodbrok's heart?" And no one in the room had an answer they were willing to say out loud. The blooming ceremony reached its climax, and the hidden power of the boy who returned from death was about to rewrite everything that anyone in that room thought they understood about the Ragnar name. The sky above split open, revealing a terrifying crimson abyss, and the sight of it made the ceremony feel very small against the scale of what was arriving. The Ascendant Dragon sat serenely upon his throne, observing the unfolding events with the particular stillness of a man who has already seen how this ends. The white-haired warrior stood stoically amidst the desolate aftermath of the brutal battlefield and then summoned a magnificent fiery lion spirit to stand faithfully by his side. The white-haired warrior and Theo clasped hands. A firm handshake and a promise to meet again, the kind of promise that carries the weight of everything that happened between them. A breathtakingly majestic ice castle materialized within a vast snow-covered landscape, and a formidable warrior woman confronted it with the expression of someone who has been told this is impossible and decided that's irrelevant. Theo smiled faintly, his gaze calm as he observed this entirely new scene, the smile of a man who has survived enough to find the next challenge interesting rather than terrifying. He addressed a gathered group of men, his voice steady and clear, expressing sincere gratitude for their crucial assistance during the second round. A burly man with vibrant red hair erupted into hearty, booming laughter, the laughter of someone who didn't expect to be thanked and isn't sure what to do with it. A knight in gleaming armor stepped forward, addressing the assembled group directly, and the ceremony of it carried the weight of something being made official. One warrior cried out in despair, his hopes shattered, and another man smirked with a cruel glint in his eyes, surveying the scene with the satisfaction of someone watching a plan execute. The knight declared sternly, "You must only remember this is honor." And the declaration carried the weight of something that would be tested very soon. A man with a deeply scarred face grinned, clearly relishing the unfolding drama. The grin of someone who has been in enough of these moments to know that the interesting part is always what comes next. A small dragon soared through the vast expanse of the sky, and the sight of it was the sight of something beginning. The knight stood tall before his assembled squad and then proclaimed, "Welcome, everyone, to the White Dragon Squad family!" And the words landed with the weight of a door opening. A colossal, powerful dragon descended majestically from the heavens, and the knight stood ready, his stance firm as he faced the descending beast. "The dragon!" Someone identified it, and the knight introduced his formidable partner with the ease of someone making an introduction at a dinner party. "This is Gula." A blinding spectral light erupted, a beacon hinting at a power about to be unleashed, unlike anything the assembled crowd had ever witnessed. The sheer intensity of it dawned on someone watching, and the dawning had the quality of a realization that doesn't reverse itself. Duchess Cecilia, resplendent in her red dress, spoke with a conviction that carried the weight of everything she had watched her son become. "You are that light. I will help spread that light across the entire world," she pledged, and the pledge was the pledge of a woman who has been waiting to say this for a very long time. A figure in gleaming armor with a grim expression was shown, and the grimness of it suggested that spreading light across the world would not be a peaceful process. Two figures began their journey, one with vibrant pink hair grinning with the enjoyment of someone who finds swift travel genuinely fun, the other wearing a look of deep concern. "I pledge my loyalty to you, young master," the pink-haired one declared with unwavering resolve, and the declaration carried the weight of something that had been building to this moment. A monstrous bird-like creature carrying two riders soared into view, and one of the riders observed, "I don't think this suits their natural talents." The other simply shrugged, "Well, they'll just have to manage." And the pragmatism of it was the pragmatism of people who have run out of better options. From the depths, a colossal reptilian beast with glowing purple eyes emerged, its presence radiating the kind of menace that doesn't need to announce itself. High above, a monstrous dark dragon cut a menacing path through the sky, its shadow falling over everything below. And the shadow was the kind that didn't lift. The colossal dark dragon faced off against a pale winged dragon in a brutal aerial confrontation, and the pale dragon found itself hopelessly outnumbered, encircled by sinister dark creatures. A monstrous, mutated wyvern had managed to infiltrate the sacred nest of the white dragon, and the infiltration carried the weight of something that had been planned for a very long time. The combined might of the demon dragon and the sword dragon arrived to turn the tide, and the arrival changed the geometry of the aerial battle immediately. A woman with dark hair and a fur-lined collar flashed an imposing, almost predatory smile. "Let's share him," and the man beside her gasped in shock. Both the pink-haired woman and the dark-haired figure exchanged startled glances, their expressions hardening with the renewed determination of people who have just understood what they've walked into. A chilling close-up revealed a face etched with stern, menacing resolve, its eyes burning with an unsettling red glow that suggested the resolve was not new, just newly visible. The pale dragon, identified as Umbra, carried a name that translated to shadow in an ancient, forgotten language, and the name was accurate in ways that went beyond translation. A dark dragon's fierce, battle-ready gaze was captured, its posture signaling an imminent, brutal clash, and the clash was the kind that would leave marks on the landscape. This primal rage was about to be met by something far greater, a chilling presence descending from the heavens, radiating immense power. This arrival signaled a turning point. a force that would reshape the coming battle in ways that no one on either side had planned for. The Fool of the Southern Gate declared her eagerness. "I'm going first!" and then turned to her companion with a flicker of concern crossing her face. "Master?" Theo's dark eyes ignited, glowing with a fierce awakened power, and the system notification that followed confirmed what his eyes were already showing. Hatchling synchronization. You can now use telekinesis to move a target. He exploded into action, a blur of motion that engaged the threat before the threat had finished forming its intent. His blade erupted with vibrant blue energy, a harbinger of the coming clash. The color of it, the color of something that has been waiting to be released. He moved with an almost supernatural speed and precision, each step calculated, the boy who returned from death with a vow and a dragon heart, finally operating without restraint. The terrifying roar of a monstrous dragon shattered the battlefield's silence, and Theo's gaze sharpened, his focus locking onto the formidable beast with the precision of a man who has studied his enemy. He drew his sword, its latent power crackling with sheer anticipation, and the dragon's massive head loomed, a terrifying silhouette against the sky. Unwavering, Theo charged forward, because retreat was not a word that had survived his past life, and he had no intention of relearning it. Theo unleashed his full power, the very air around him vibrating with immense energy, and this wasn't just a display, it was a promise of the devastation to come. Raw, untamed lightning energy crackled, filling the arena with a force that was almost tangible, and the watching crowd took a collective step backward. Theo summoned multiple spectral blades, their ethereal forms materializing to surround him, and they quickly formed a swirling deadly storm of steel, a tempest of pure offense. He executed his signature devastating skill, Dragon Streak, and the name of it carried the weight of something that had been earned rather than inherited. The entire world erupted in a blinding flash of light and raw energy, momentarily obscuring everything, leaving only the sound of something enormous happening. Emerging from the chaos, a small, majestic white dragon appeared, radiating an aura of ethereal purity that was entirely at odds with the destruction surrounding it. The sword dragon observed the unfolding scene, her expression shifting from surprise to something more profound, the expression of a woman revising an assessment she thought was already final. "Oh, wait!" she exclaimed, and the sudden realization in her voice was the realization of someone who has just understood what they're standing next to. A powerful, radiant figure appeared, extending a hand as if to usher in a new era, and the gesture carried the weight of something that had been building since the first line of the first life. A woman, serene and otherworldly, floated gracefully within a golden glowing circle, and the serenity of it was the serenity of something that has been waiting for exactly this moment. Theo raised a glowing pendant, a triumphant grin spreading across his face, the grin of a man who has just completed something that cost him everything twice. The victory was short-lived, because a roaring dragon appeared, and the white dragon Umbra unleashed a defiant roar that confronted a lone knight with the fury of something that has been wronged. Theo, his dark hair and striking red eyes fixed on the confrontation, observed the escalating tension with the focused attention of a man who is already calculating his next move. In the shadows behind them, a skeletal figure remained bound by heavy chains, a silent, ominous presence that had been there longer than anyone had noticed. The knight unexpectedly knelt before this decayed, skeletal entity, an act of subservience that recontextualized everything that had come before it. He elaborated on Umbra's formidable magic, emphasizing its unique and powerful form, and the elaboration carried the weight of someone who has been studying this for a very long time. Another figure with dark hair and red eyes silently watched the unfolding events from the periphery, and the silence of his watching was the silence of a man who is deciding something. The chained skeletal entity lunged forward with terrifying speed, its red eyes burning with malice, and the speed of it was the speed of something that has been restrained for too long. Umbra's roars echoed through the arena as the powerful creature launched its own fierce attack, and the battlefield became the kind of place where standing still was the most dangerous option. The skeletal creature bared its terrifying maw, unleashing a piercing scream that chilled the very air, and the sound of it carried the particular quality of something ancient and angry. The knight engaged Umbra in a fierce duel, their clash sending sparks flying across the battlefield, and the sparks illuminated the skeletal figure's ghastly form, its malevolent red eyes gleaming with renewed intensity. A desperate cry rang out, Someone calling for the family head, followed by another echoing plea that carried the weight of a situation, spiraling beyond anyone's ability to contain. The skeletal creature's face contorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage, and the rage of it was the rage of something that has been waiting for this moment specifically. The skeletal creature struck a downed figure with brutal force, and a woman with short pink hair rushed forward, her brow furrowed with concern as she noted the demonic energy radiating from Theo. Theo stated he had lost all his energy, admitting he feared there was no antidote for his condition, and the admission carried the weight of a man who has run out of options and knows it. Theo collapsed, utterly exhausted, pleading with Umbra to cease its relentless assault, and the pleading was the pleading of a man who has given everything he had and is asking for a moment. Theo's eyes suddenly glowed intensely red as he asked if he could mix something, and the question carried the particular quality of someone who has not, in fact, given up. Umbra prepared to feed it to Theo. But the dragon readied a devastating strike, and the timing of it was the timing of something that doesn't intend to allow recovery. Theo lay on the ground, gasping for air, his body spent, and a woman's voice cried out, "Young master!" as she rushed toward him. Theo's face contorted in agony as he asked Umbra desperately, "Is there a way?" And the question was the question of a man who has survived impossible things before and is asking if this is the one that finally isn't. He looked at Umbra with raw desperation, his red eyes burning with an unyielding fire, the fire of the vow he made in the first life renewed in the second, and still burning in this moment. The family had arrived, unleashing a powerful punch that shattered the very ground beneath them, and the raw power of it ignited something even more profound within Theo. A blinding golden light engulfed Theo Ragnar, a vortex of power swirling within him. And this wasn't just an attack, it was a transformation beginning. Robed figures surrounded a kneeling figure in a burst of light. Umbra, the pale dragon, caught in their ritual, and the ritual carried the weight of something that had been prepared for this exact contingency. The dark dragon readied itself for combat, its menacing purple eyes burning with intent, and the intent was the intent of something that has been patient for a very long time and is done being patient. Severe poisoning flooded Theo's body, and he was forced to integrate the magic power directly from the venom, the process brutal and entirely without precedent. Demonic energy began to accumulate within him, fueled by a ghost flower's dark essence, and the accumulation was the beginning of something that had no clean category. A skeletal figure lunged forward, jaw dripping with fresh blood, attacking with terrifying speed, and a dark-haired man recoiled, crying out, "Evelyn!" with a voice that cracked under the weight of the name. Evelyn Nerville held someone close, her expression a mask of deep distress, the expression of a woman who has been trying to protect something and is running out of ways to do it. Theo Ragnar, now 17, was revealed as the legendary Flash Tiger, the best of the millennium, and the revelation landed with the weight of something that had been true the entire time. His extraordinary talents included Ragnar, player, and the unique role of Guardian Dragon's companion, a combination that no record-keeper in the family history had ever seen in a single individual. Theo's eyes glowed with a fierce primal red as he felt the immense power of the dragon constellation awakening within him, and the awakening was the awakening of something that had been waiting since before he was born. A dark-haired figure grinned menacingly, purple energy crackling around him like static, preparing a devastating strike with the calm of someone who has been planning this for a very long time. Ancient runes were carved into a stone wall, glowing faintly, and a disembodied voice narrated the cryptic inscriptions with the particular weight of someone reading a document that was never meant to be found. This hidden sanctuary held the key to a desperate comeback. But the question was whether a warrior could truly prepare for vengeance when their body had already begun to betray them. "It's a good place to prepare for my revenge," the voice admitted, "but my physical body..." And the sentence trailed off in a way that said everything the words didn't. Another voice declared, "I decided to leave everything here and melt down my sword," and the finality of it carried the weight of an irreversible decision made in the full knowledge of what it would cost. "Then nox a sword and bind it to me." A powerful artifact about to be forged anew, and the forging of it would change everything downstream. Evelyn and the dark-haired man stared in disbelief, their shock palpable as they questioned the rain sword, and the disbelief was the disbelief of people watching a certainty dissolve. A vast swirling energy erupted, accompanied by a voice detailing the tragic fate of a hero whose story had been buried under the weight of the names that came after him. The dark-haired man gripped a glowing sword, and the revelation arrived with the force of something that had been waiting to be said. Hector Ragnar, the legendary Wind Lord. A colossal dark dragon roared, its malevolent red eyes blazing with the fury of something ancient and specific, and the fury of it filled the space completely. A pale dragon named Roadbroke appeared, its piercing blue eyes scanning the chaos with the particular attention of something that has seen this kind of chaos before and knows how it ends. Theo Ragnar was seen riding atop Roadbroke, and a woman desperately cried out his name, the cry carrying everything she hadn't been able to say before this moment. The dark dragon lunged, its massive jaws snapping shut around a colossal sword impaled deep within its mouth, and the image of it was the image of something that has been building since the first line of the first life. Theo held the vow he had made in the burning rose garden, renewed in the dungeon, spoken 3 times across 2 lives, and it was still burning. The pale dragon beneath him roared, the sound of it carrying across the battlefield with the authority of something that has chosen a side. Evelyn Nerville, below them, held the injured figure close. Her expression, the expression of a woman who has been fighting for this young man since before she understood why. The dark dragon's eyes blazed upward, finding Theo on Roadbroke's back, finding the sword, finding the golden light that was beginning to build. Here's the thing about vows. The ones that survive 2 lives aren't the ones made in comfort, they're the ones made in the burning rose garden, in the dungeon, in the moment the sword shattered. Theo's red eyes blazed with the dragon constellation's power, and the power of it was the power of something that has been waiting for exactly this scale of problem. The dark dragon lunged again, and Roadbroke met it, the 2 colossal forms colliding with a force that shook the landscape. Theo raised his sword above the clash, the blade crackling with the accumulated weight of everything the past life taught him and everything the present life had built. The demonic energy within him and the golden light around him existed in the same body simultaneously, and the tension between them was the tension of a man who has not yet decided which one wins. "Is there a way?" he had asked Umbra, and the answer was forming now, in the collision of golden light and dark energy, in the sword raised above a dragon's back. The sword dragon watched from below, her expression no longer surprise. It was something older, something that looked like recognition. The prodigy with the blue scarf watched too, his bewilderment finally replaced by the focused attention of someone who understands that what he's watching is going to matter for a very long time. The former family head, from wherever she was watching, had offered Theo secrets of the world and the Ragnar family, and Theo was, in this moment, becoming one of those secrets. The family head's crimson eyes blazed upward at his son, and the expression on his face was the expression of a man watching something he didn't create and can't contain. Kale Ragnar, who had asked, "Who here doesn't want revenge?" was looking at the answer. Roadbroke's ancient yellow eyes burned with the particular light of something that has finally found the person it was waiting for. The dark dragon roared in fury, and the fury of it was the fury of something that has realized too late that it chose the wrong target. Theo's blade descended, not with the desperation of someone trying to survive, but with the precision of someone who came back from the dead specifically for this. The golden light erupted from the impact, blinding, enormous, the kind of light that doesn't just illuminate but changes the shape of what it touches. The Fool of the Southern Gate shielded her eyes and grinned, because she had watched Theo's growth with her own eyes, and this was exactly what she expected. Evelyn Nerville held the injured figure and did not look away, because she had been watching this young man since the training ground, and she had learned that looking away was never the right choice. The vow was kept, not perfectly, not without cost, not without the kind of damage that doesn't heal cleanly, but kept. The dark dragon's roar became something else as the golden light engulfed it. Something that sounded less like fury and more like the end of a very long argument. Theo Ragnar, the boy who couldn't protect anything in the first life, had just protected everything in the second. The pale dragon Roadbroke beneath him let out a sound that carried across the battlefield, ancient, resonant, the sound of a covenant being fulfilled. The sky above them, which had been split open and crimson and wrong, began to change. Slowly, the way things change when something enormous has just been resolved. The demonic energy within Theo and the golden light around him reached their point of decision, and the decision was made in the same breath as the vow. because they were the same thing. He had swallowed poison and turned it into power. Not because the poison was good, but because he was the kind of person who doesn't waste what he's given, even when what he's given is terrible. The battlefield below was still, the kind of still that settles after something irreversible, the kind that means the fighting is over and the accounting is about to begin. Duchess Cecilia, somewhere in the chaos, had pledged to help spread that light across the entire world, and she was looking at it now, doing exactly what she promised. The ancient dragon Roadbroke carried Theo above the aftermath, and the image of it was the image of a legend being written in real time by someone who had already lived the draft. The sword dragon lowered her blade, not in defeat, but in the particular gesture of a warrior acknowledging something worth acknowledging. The family head watched his son riding the ancient dragon above the ruined battlefield, and the laughter that had erupted when Theo declared he would not kneel was very far away now. The prodigy with the blue scarf stood in the aftermath and tried to find the right word for what he had just witnessed, and failed, which was its own kind of testament. The ascendant dragon sat upon his throne and observed the resolution with the serenity of a man who had seen this coming and chosen to let it arrive on its own terms. The former family head who had offered Theo the secrets of the world was watching a young man who had just become one of those secrets, and the offer still stood. The Sky Dragon director had said, "Nothing will go according to your plan." And he had been wrong, which was apparently something that happened to Sky Dragon directors when Theo Ragnar was involved. Evelyn Nerville, who had once detected a mana anomaly at Training Ground 4 and thought it meant execution, was holding an injured figure and watching the sky, and the expression on her face was the expression of a woman who has revised every assumption she ever made about this young man. The gray-haired instructor, somewhere in the aftermath, had nothing left to say, which was the most honest thing about him. The vow made in the burning rose garden, "I couldn't protect anything," had been answered, finally, completely, in a language made of golden light and dragon fire, and the particular stubbornness of someone who came back from the dead with a single specific purpose. Roadbroke descended, carrying Theo back toward the ground, toward Evelyn, toward the fool of the southern gate, toward the people at Training Ground 4 who had been called riffraff and dregs and had followed him anyway. The woman who had cried out his name from below reached him first, and the relief in her face was the relief of someone who has been holding their breath for a very long time. Theo looked at her, really looked at her, and the expression on his face was the expression of a man who has finally, for the first time in 2 lives, arrived somewhere he intended to be. The battlefield was quiet now, the way battlefields go quiet when something definitive has happened and everyone present is still processing what it means. The ancient runes, carved into the stone wall somewhere below, the ones that had been waiting to be read, glowed faintly in the aftermath, as if acknowledging that the story they described had just reached a chapter they hadn't anticipated. Hector Ragnar, the legendary Windlord, whose sword was being reforged somewhere in a hidden sanctuary, was a name that would matter more now in the wake of this than it had before. The dark egg that had cracked to reveal a single malevolent red eye was still out there, still watching, still waiting, because the resolution of one thing is always the beginning of something else. The nameless monarch, the being once divided from a colossal dragon, had been mentioned in the shadows, and shadows don't forget what's been said in them. The 2 majestic dragons that had erupted into the sky earlier were still flying, and the sky they flew through was a different sky than the one they'd launched into. Theo's luck stat was still -49, and he was still standing, which suggested that the stat had never been the whole story. The fool of the southern gate approached him in the aftermath, her admiration for him no longer the admiration of someone watching from a distance. It was the admiration of someone who had been in the room. She had shouted, "I'm going first!" before the final clash, and she had meant it, and the meaning of it was the meaning of someone who has decided to stop watching and start being part of what happens next. The sword dragon sheathed her blade, and the act of sheathing it was the act of a woman who has just decided something about the young man she's been watching. Prunus, lady of the Plum Blossom Palace, had declared she would show everyone how to make this place Theo's grave, and she was looking at him now, alive, riding an ancient dragon, and the declaration had the quality of something that had not aged well. The white-haired warrior stood in the aftermath with his fiery lion spirit beside him, and the handshake he had shared with Theo carried the weight of a promise that was going to be complicated to keep. The ceremony was over. The survival round, the bell round, the face-to-face with the family head, all of it concluded in a way that the blooming ceremony's architects had not designed for. Kale Ragnar surveyed the aftermath with the expression of a man who asked, "Who here doesn't want revenge?" and received an answer that was larger than the question. The lord of the house, who had asked Theo, "Will you do it?" and watched his son say yes and mean it in ways that shook the foundations of the family, was looking at the sky. Duchess Cecilia's pledge, "I will help spread that light across the entire world," was no longer a promise about a future thing. It was a description of something she had just watched happen. The blue interface that had declared, "You have ranked up," was still visible to Theo, and the ranking felt different now, felt like the beginning of something rather than the end. The ether core he had questioned after the long, arduous quest was still warm in his memory, and the accomplishment of it carried the weight of everything it had cost to reach it. Evelyn Nerville, who had once told him his skills were utter trash, stood in the aftermath and did not say anything, which was, from her, the highest form of acknowledgement. The mana-hole in his dragon heart, the anomaly she had detected, the secret that could have meant execution, was no longer a secret, and the execution had not come. The vow had survived 2 lives, 3 explicit statements, and a battlefield that was designed to be his grave, and it was still standing, the same way he was still standing. The former family head's offer remained on the table: the Ascendant Dragon Institute, the secrets of the world, the secrets of the Ragnar family, and Theo had not yet answered. The answer was coming, but first there was the aftermath to walk through, the people to account for, the cost to be tallied. The Dark Dragon's fury had been met with golden light, and the golden light had won, which was the kind of outcome that changes the shape of every future calculation. Roadbroke's ancient yellow eyes regarded Theo with the particular attention of something that has just confirmed a long-held suspicion. The covenant the ancient dragon had described, the sacred pact that permitted the Chosen One to pose 3 crucial questions, was still waiting to be invoked. Theo Ragnar, the boy who returned from death with a vow and a dragon heart, had 3 questions he could ask an ancient dragon, and the weight of that opportunity was enormous. He had already lived one version of the answers, the version where everything burned, where he couldn't protect anything, where the rose garden was ash and the servants were fallen, and his mother was a cold corpse on the ground. He was not going to live that version again, and the certainty of it was the certainty of the vow, spoken 3 times, earned twice, and still burning in the red eyes of a 17-year-old who refused to be the disgrace of anything. The sky above the aftermath was changing, the crimson abyss closing, the light of it shifting towards something that didn't have a name yet but was clearly the beginning of one. The people at Training Ground 4, the ones called Riffraff, the ones called Dregs, the ones Theo had attached himself to, with the particular stubbornness of someone who knows what it costs to lose people, were still standing. The fool of the Southern Gate was still grinning. The grin of someone who has just witnessed something she intends to tell people about for the rest of her life. The prodigy with the blue scarf had stopped being confused, which was for him a significant development. The ancient runes on the stone wall glowed faintly in the aftermath. Patient, waiting, the way things wait when they know the person they're waiting for is coming. Hector Ragnar's sword was being reforged somewhere, and the reforging of it was the reforging of a story that had been buried under the weight of everything that came after. The dark egg with the malevolent red eye was still cracking, still becoming, still the beginning of something that the resolution of this battle had not resolved. The nameless monarch was still out there at the world's edge, and the ancient dragon Roadbroke's return had been timed against something that the nameless monarch was also counting. The Sky Dragon director had been wrong about Theo's plan, and the wrongness of it carried the weight of a man who would need to revise every assumption he had made about the boy from Rose Palace. The former family head's rounds were spent, and the spending of them had been deliberate, had been calculated, had been the act of a woman who decided that Theo Ragnar was worth the investment. Theo descended from Roadbroke's back and landed in the aftermath, and the landing was the landing of a man arriving somewhere he intends to stay. The injured figure that Evelyn had been holding was breathing, and the breathing of it was the most important sound on the battlefield. Theo looked at Evelyn, the woman who had called his skills utter trash, who had detected his mana anomaly, who had formed a party with him and completed a tutorial quest, and something passed between them that didn't require words. The sword dragon was watching from a distance, and the watching had the quality of a woman deciding whether to make an offer. The white-haired warrior and his fiery lion spirit stood in the aftermath, the handshake with Theo already a memory that was going to matter more as time went on. Kael Ragnar descended from wherever he had been watching and walked through the aftermath with the particular stride of a man who has just seen his fams change. He passed the field of scattered swords, the graveyard of attempts that didn't make it through the ceremony, and did not slow down. He reached Theo, and the two of them stood in the aftermath, father and son, in the ruins of a ceremony that had been designed as a trap and had become something else entirely. The family head looked at his son, the boy he had asked, "Will you do it?" And the answer was visible in everything around them. Theo looked back, the boy who had sworn he would not kneel voluntarily, who had declared "this ends tonight" 3 times across 2 lives, who had carried the vow through the burning rose garden and the dungeon and the dragon's lair. The silence between them was the silence of 2 men who have just understood something about each other that neither of them has the words for yet. Roadbroke's ancient yellow eyes observed the exchange from a respectful distance, because ancient dragons know when to give things space. The sky above them was no longer crimson, it was the particular color of something that has just been decided. The blooming ceremony was over, and the Ragnar family that emerged from it was not the same family that had entered it, which was the point of ceremonies, even the ones designed as traps. Theo Ragnar, the disgrace of Ragnar, the boy who couldn't protect anything, the man who came back with a vow, stood in the aftermath of the ceremony that was supposed to be his grave. He was alive. The people he came back to protect were alive. The vow was kept. The ancient dragon Roadbroke, whose covenant permitted 3 crucial questions, waited with the patience of something that has been waiting since the dawn of time and is accustomed to it. Theo had 3 questions, and the weight of them was the weight of everything he had learned in not 2 lives about what questions actually matter. The first question he already knew, had known since the burning rose garden, since the moment the hooded figure stood over his mother and said her death was his fault. The second question was forming, shaped by the ceremony, by the nameless monarch at the world's edge, by the dark egg still cracking somewhere beyond the battlefield. The third question was the one he hadn't yet earned, the one that would only become clear when the first 2 had been answered, and the shape of what came next was finally visible. The former family head's offer was still waiting. The Ascendant Dragon Institute, the secrets of the world, the secrets of the Ragnar family. And Theo had not yet answered, because the answer required knowing which version of himself was going to walk through that door. The fool of the southern gate was still watching, her grin undiminished, her admiration for him the admiration of someone who has decided to stop watching and start following. Evelyn Nerville stood in the aftermath with the injured figure, her expression, the expression of a woman who has been fighting for this young man since before she understood why, and who has just understood why. The mana anomaly she had detected at Training Ground 4, the secret that could have meant execution, was no longer a secret, and the execution had not come, and the young man at the center of it was standing in the ruins of a ceremony that was supposed to be his grave. The gray-haired instructor, somewhere in the aftermath, had nothing left to say, and the silence of him was the loudest thing in the room. The vow made in the burning rose garden had survived 2 lives, 3 explicit statements, a dungeon, a dragon's lair, a proxy battle, a blooming ceremony designed as a trap, and a final clash above the ruins of everything the first life had failed to protect. It was still standing the same way Theo was still standing, because some things don't break, they just get tested until the testing is done. The dark egg with the malevolent red eye was still becoming, and the becoming of it was the next thing, the thing after the ceremony, the thing that Theo's 3 questions were going to need to address. The nameless monarch was still at the world's edge. And the ancient dragon Roadbroke's return had been timed against something that the nameless monarch had been counting toward for a very long time. The Noxa, a man with a deeply scarred face grins, clearly relishing the unfolding drama. A small dragon gracefully soars through the vast expanse of the sky. The knight stands tall and imposing before his assembled squad. He then proclaims, "Welcome everyone to the White Dragon Squad family." A colossal, powerful dragon descends majestically from the heavens. The knight stands ready, his stance firm as he faces the descending beast. A dragon's fearsome head appears, identified with the ominous moniker D-Dragon. The knight then introduces his formidable partner, stating, "This is Gula." And with that introduction, a blinding spectral light erupts. Illuminating a path forward. It's a beacon, hinting at a power about to be unleashed. The sheer intensity of this light dawns on someone watching. It's unlike anything they've ever witnessed. Duchess Cecilia, resplendent in her red dress, speaks with conviction. "You are that light." Her voice rings with determination as she pledges, "I will help spread that light across the entire world." A figure clad in gleaming armor, his expression grim, is then shown. Meanwhile, elsewhere, two figures, one with vibrant pink hair, begin their journey. The pink-haired companion grins, seemingly enjoying their swift ride on a transport. The dark-haired individual, however, wears a look of deep concern for their upcoming travels. "I pledge my loyalty to you, young master," the pink-haired one declares with unwavering resolve. Suddenly, a monstrous bird-like creature, carrying two riders, soars into view. One of the riders observes, "I don't think this suits their natural talents." The other simply shrugs, replying, "Well, they'll just have to manage." Then, from the depths, a colossal reptilian beast with glowing purple eyes emerges, its presence radiating menace. This chapter throws us right into the chaos as two figures, small and terrified, witness a terrifying event unfold from their hiding spot. High above, a monstrous dark dragon cuts a menacing path through the sky, its shadow falling over everything below. The colossal dark dragon faces off against a pale winged dragon in a brutal aerial confrontation. The pale dragon finds itself hopelessly outnumbered, encircled by a swarm of sinister dark creatures. A monstrous, mutated wyvern had managed to infiltrate the sacred nest of the white dragon. Ultimately, the combined might of the demon dragon and the sword dragon arrived to turn the tide of battle. A woman with dark hair and a fur-lined collar flashes an imposing, almost predatory smile. "Let's share him," she purrs, a statement that makes the man beside her gasp in shock. Both the pink-haired woman and the dark-haired figure exchange startled glances, their expressions hardening with renewed determination. A chilling close-up reveals a face etched with stern, menacing resolve, its eyes burning with an unsettling red glow. The pale dragon, identified as Umbra, carries a name that translates to shadow in an ancient, forgotten language. A dark dragon's fierce, battle-ready gaze is captured, its posture signaling an imminent, brutal clash. But this primal rage is about to be met by something far greater. A chilling presence descends from the heavens, radiating immense power. This arrival signals a turning point, a force that will reshape the coming battle. "I'm going first," Cibelor, the fool of the southern gate, declares her eagerness. She turns to her companion, a flicker of concern crossing her face. "Master?" Theo Ragnar's dark eyes ignite, glowing with a fierce, awakened power. A system notification flashes. "Hatchling synchronization, you can now use telekinesis to move a target." Theo explodes into action, a blur of motion that instantly engages the threat. His blade erupts with vibrant blue energy, a harbinger of the coming clash. He moves with an almost supernatural speed and precision, each step calculated. The terrifying roar of a monstrous dragon shatters the battlefield's silence. Theo's gaze sharpens, his focus locking onto the formidable beast before him. He draws his sword, its latent power crackling with sheer anticipation. The dragon's massive head looms, a truly terrifying silhouette against the sky. Unwavering, Theo charges forward once more, his resolve absolute. Theo Ragnar unleashes his full power, the very air around him vibrating with immense energy. This isn't just a display, it's a promise of the devastation to come. Raw, untamed lightning energy crackles, filling the arena with an almost tangible force. Theo summons multiple spectral blades, their ethereal forms materializing to surround him. These blades quickly form a swirling, deadly storm of steel, a tempest of pure offense. He then executes his signature devastating skill, Dragon Streak. The entire world erupts in a blinding flash of light and raw energy, momentarily obscuring everything. Emerging from the chaos, a small, majestic white dragon appears, radiating an aura of ethereal purity. Lady Prunus observes the unfolding scene, her expression shifting from surprise to something more profound. "Oh wait," she exclaims, a sudden realization dawning on her. Just then, a powerful, radiant figure appears, extending a hand as if to usher in a new era. A woman, serene and otherworldly, floats gracefully within a golden glowing circle. Theo raises a glowing pendant, a triumphant grin spreading across his face as victory is secured. Yet this victory is short-lived as a roaring dragon appears. The white dragon Umbra unleashes a defiant roar, confronting a lone knight. Theo, his dark hair and striking red eyes fixed on the confrontation, observes the escalating tension. In the shadows behind them, a skeletal figure remains bound by heavy chains, a silent, ominous presence. The knight unexpectedly kneels before this decayed, skeletal entity, an act of subservience rather than defiance. He elaborates on Umbra's formidable magic, emphasizing its unique and powerful form. Another figure, mirroring Theo's dark hair and red eyes, silently watches the unfolding events from the periphery. The chained skeletal entity suddenly lunges forward with terrifying speed, its red eyes burning with malice. Umbra's roars echo through the arena as the powerful creature launches its own fierce attack. The skeletal creature bares its terrifying maw, unleashing a piercing scream that chills the very air. The knight bravely engages Umbra in a fierce duel, their clash sending sparks flying across the battlefield. The skeletal figure's ghastly form becomes more distinct, its malevolent red eyes gleaming with renewed intensity. A desperate cry rings out, someone calling for Kale, followed by another echoing plea. The skeletal creature's skeletal face contorts, twisting into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. What if the weakest son in the family was secretly the deadliest warrior on the continent? This chapter reveals the horrifying truth behind Theo Ragnar's struggle. The skeletal creature strikes a downed figure with brutal force. Gula, the woman with short pink hair, checks on Theo, her brow furrowed with concern as she notes the demonic energy radiating from him. Theo states he's lost all his energy, admitting he fears there's no antidote for his condition. Theo collapses, utterly exhausted, pleading with Umbra to cease its relentless assault. Theo's eyes suddenly glow intensely red as he asks if he can mix something. Umbra prepares to feed it to Theo, but the dragon readies a devastating strike. Theo lies on the ground, gasping for air, his body spent. A woman's voice cries out, "Young master," as she rushes towards him. Theo's face contorts in agony, desperately asking Umbra, "Is there a way?" Theo looks at Umbra with raw desperation, his red eyes burning with an unyielding fire. Kale Ragnar arrives, unleashing a powerful punch that shatters the very ground beneath them. But this raw power ignites something even more profound within Theo. A blinding golden light engulfs Theo Ragnar, a vortex of power swirling within him. This isn't just an attack, it's a transformation beginning. Robed figures surround a kneeling figure in a burst of light. It's Umbra, the pale dragon, caught in their ritual. The lesser drake, a dark dragon, readies itself for combat, its menacing purple eyes burning with intent. Severe poisoning floods Theo's body. He's forced to integrate the magic power directly from the venom. Demonic energy begins to accumulate within Theo, fueled by a ghost flower's dark essence. A skeletal figure lunges forward, its jaw dripping with fresh blood. It attacks with terrifying speed. A dark-haired man recoils, crying out, "Evelyn!" His voice cracks with desperation. Evelyn Nerville holds someone close, her expression a mask of deep distress. She's trying to protect them. Theo Ragnar, now 17, is revealed as the legendary Flash Tiger, the best of the millennium. His extraordinary talents include Ragnar, Player, and the unique role of Guardian Dragon's companion. Suddenly, Theo's eyes glow with a fierce primal red. He feels the immense power of the dragon constellation awakening. A dark-haired figure grins menacingly, purple energy crackling around him like static. He's preparing a devastating strike. Ancient runes are carved into a stone wall, glowing faintly. A disembodied voice narrates the cryptic inscriptions. This hidden sanctuary holds the key to a desperate comeback. But can a warrior truly prepare for vengeance when their body betrays them? It's a good place to prepare for my revenge, but my physical body... The voice trails off, hinting at a critical limitation. Another voice declares, "I decided to leave everything here and melt down my sword." This sounds like a final, irreversible decision. The Noxa sword and bind it to me. A powerful artifact is about to be forged anew. Evelyn and the dark-haired man stare in disbelief, their shock palpable as they question the Rain Sword. A vast, swirling energy erupts, accompanied by a voice detailing the tragic fate of an unfortunate hero. The dark-haired man grips a glowing sword, revealed to be Hector Ragnar, the legendary Wind Lord. A colossal dark dragon roars, its malevolent red eyes blazing with pure fury. Suddenly, a pale dragon named Roadbroke appears, its piercing blue eyes scanning the chaos. Theo Ragnar is seen riding atop Roadbrook while a woman desperately cries out his name. The dark dragon lunges, its massive jaws snapping shut around a colossal sword impaled deep within its mouth. The entire world explodes in a blinding, brilliant golden light.